I exposed my wife's cheating by live streaming her in the act with her affair partner to everyone. I realized it was time to wrap things up and leave the master control booth before someone showed up to shut me down. If I acted quickly, I could switch off the live assist mode and return the system to its fully automated broadcast mode. Our local TV audience had seen enough for the night. Once I had the system running normally again, I could leave and grab a drink. I really needed one. I also understood that there would be consequences to face. Consequences at home and from the general manager and FCC once they pieced it all together and came after me. But I was already feeling like I was in a bad situation, so I didn't care anymore. Like I said, I needed a drink. I headed to Frankie's on Roswell Road, a popular local sports bar, and ordered a beer. I sat there watching the end of the Monday night football game while having a few more beers. There was a lot of chatter in the bar, and I knew what it was about. I couldn't catch everything, but I heard enough to know I had accomplished my goal. I had stirred up conversation. Luckily, nobody pulled me into their discussions, so I drank alone in silence while witnessing the Saints dominating the Falcons. By the time 10:30 p.m. rolled around, I was feeling numb. The game had ended and my team had lost, New Orleans 23, Atlanta 3. It seemed like the Saints were particularly motivated, perhaps because it was their first game back in their stadium since the hurricane, and they completely outplayed the Falcons. Our station aired the game alongside ESPN because we were one of the teams involved. I inquired with the bartender about leaving my car in the parking lot overnight, and he agreed it was a wise decision given my condition. Recognizing my state, he arranged for a cab since I resided just a short distance away in a pleasant residential area of Sandy Springs. So that's pretty much the conclusion of the story, and I suppose I should begin at the start to give you a clear picture of how I ended up in this situation. My name is Richard Headed, but my friends call me Dick. I work as a broadcast engineer for WBDK, a local CBS affiliate in Atlanta, Georgia. I hold a graduate degree from MIT in electrical engineering and computer science, and I also obtained a second degree in broadcast technologies. Needless to say, I'm highly qualified in my field and have held several challenging positions. I've been working in the industry for 22 years, with stints at various television stations along the East Coast before settling in Atlanta for the past 5 years. If you're curious about my appearance, I'm 46 years old with dark hair that's graying at the temples. I've never felt the need to conceal the gray, but I do apply a bit of dye to my small mustache to keep it from showing any signs of gray. I stand at 6 feet 3 inches and weigh around 190 lbs, although I haven't stepped on a scale in quite some time. I'd say I'm moderately attractive, though I wouldn't compare myself to Mel Gibson or Richard Gere. You'll notice I didn't mention any younger actors, primarily because I'm not familiar with many of their names and also because I'm not in the same age bracket, so it wouldn't be relevant. Anyway, I consider myself good-looking, but I'm not the type you'd see in a romance novel. My wife Sharon and I have been married for 22 years, and we have 2 daughters, Melanie and Stephanie. Melanie is married, while Stephanie is a senior in college. Sharon stands around 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing no more than 135 lbs, with long blonde hair that reaches her shoulders. She's incredibly attractive, with a figure that catches attention, and she's one of the sweetest women I've ever known. It's hard to find someone who doesn't like her. For the past 18 months, Sharon has been working as a secretary for our pastor, Reverend Bob Shelter. Now, on to the story. Last Friday, I had some extra time for lunch and decided to surprise Sharon by taking her out to lunch. I parked near the side entrance of the church offices due to the rain. When I arrived, she wasn't in her office, but I decided to walk in anyway. As I stood there, I overheard Sharon speaking to Pastor Bob in his office. She mentioned how excited she was for Monday night, expressing anticipation about spending time together. Due to my work covering the Monday night football games, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Their conversation turned intimate, with talk of booking a room at the La Quinta Inn and expressing longing for physical intimacy. Hearing this filled me with shock, nausea, and rising anger. I knew I had to leave before I did something rash. It was a struggle to walk away, but I couldn't bring myself to confront them in that moment. Despite my desire to confront them, I feared I might act impulsively and regret it later. I slipped out the same way I came in, hoping they hadn't noticed my presence. They had security cameras, but I entered through a side door they likely didn't monitor. As I drove away, it was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever made. I was so shaken that I knew I wouldn't be productive for the rest of the day. So I called the station to let them know I wasn't feeling well and would be heading home. I needed time to gather my thoughts, and home seemed like the best place for that. Sharon wouldn't be home until after 4 p.m., so I had plenty of time to contemplate. It was evident that Sharon was having an affair with Pastor Bob. I decided he would no longer be my pastor. In my mind, he became Bastard Bob, a fitting alteration. I needed to understand the extent of their relationship, how long it had been going on, and why it had started. While some people might prefer not to know these details, I was not one of them. I desperately wanted to understand why this had happened in my seemingly wonderful marriage. Clearly, Sharon didn't view our marriage as I did, and she wasn't the person I thought she was. I resolved to uncover everything I needed to know and address the situation head-on. I wasn't weak, and I would handle both of them accordingly. Once home, I brewed a pot of coffee and sat on the patio to gather my thoughts. The pleasant weather and fresh air helped me clear my mind as I contemplated the situation. I knew I would eventually figure it all out. I just needed to calm myself. I won't deny shedding a few tears that afternoon. While I understood that I didn't own Sharon or her body, it was devastating to think she would be intimate with another man or men after vowing herself to me on our wedding day. While some might not take those vows seriously, I certainly did, and I believed she did too. Experiencing something like that prompts you to question your entire set of values and wonder if you've been naive your whole life. To believe in fidelity and love, along with all that accompanies it. The most damaging aspect of having a cheating partner isn't just the act of infidelity itself, it's the loss of belief in them and everything they say or do. You lose trust in them, the very foundation of your marriage, leaving you feeling exposed and afraid. Despite being 6 feet 3 inches and weighing 190 lbs, I felt vulnerable and scared. It highlights how severely a cheating spouse can affect someone, knocking them down like nothing else could. As I sat there grappling with my emotions, striving to remain composed and rational so I could process everything, I realized there were past doubts I had dismissed due to my trust in Sharon. These seemingly insignificant issues now accumulated, forming a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach as I pieced it all together. How could I have been so blind? Trust, that's how. I had placed my trust in her. Today that trust was shattered, and all those minor clues had merged into a burden that would be hard to bear. I needed facts, that's what I craved. I wanted to understand why this happened, how long it had been going on, how frequent it was, where it took place, and who else was involved. My trust was obliterated, but I was determined to uncover the answers I needed. I realized my marriage was a facade, and I would confront that reality. But first, I needed clarity. Unwilling to face Sharon yet, without revealing my suspicions, I left the house at 3 p.m. to avoid being there when she returned. I drove into town, stopped at the station to gather some essentials for the next few days, and briefly spoke with my boss about needing time off early in the week to deal with personal matters. He seemed understanding, so I headed to Frankie's to pass the time. At 5 p.m., I called Sharon to let her know I'd be stopping somewhere for a while and wouldn't be home for dinner. She expressed annoyance, mentioning she was feeling aroused and had plans for the evening, but if I stopped, those plans would be off the table. Yeah, like I'd want that aroused state caused by Bastard Bob. She might be in the mood, but it's because of him, not me. She can satisfy herself for all I care. I told her, "Sweetheart, I've already planned to stop by, so just stay excited for me and I'll take care of you when I get back." I knew that would stir her up. She replied, "Don't count on it, pal. If you think you can treat me like that, you won't be getting any action for a while." To myself, I thought, that's exactly what I wanted. I wasn't going to touch her again until I found out what was going on, and maybe never again. I arrived home around 10:30 p.m., pretty drunk, but not too drunk to notice the bedroom door locked. I smirked and banged on the door, figuring she was awake. I shouted, "Fine, if that's how you want it, don't expect me to tend to your needs. Just suffer then." I headed for the spare bedroom, knowing she'd be furious. It would give me a break from explaining why I didn't want to be intimate with her. The next morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee when I walked in. I could feel the chill in the air as her stare pierced me. If I hadn't known about her infidelity, her look would have sent shivers down my spine. I grinned at her and said, "No need to get up and make breakfast, honey. I'll grab something on my way to golf." I left through the kitchen door, tossed my clubs in the trunk and drove off. Shortly after, my phone rang. Seeing it was her, I ignored it. A few minutes later, I checked the message. She was furious. "You jerk. How could you do this to me? Get back here right now, bastard." No, that was Bastard Bob, not me. If anyone deserved that title, it was him, not me. I had no intention of golfing, it just bought me some time. Instead, I drove straight to my former church. Did you think I'd ever want to hear Bastard Bob preach again? It was still early, so I knew no one would be around, and I was right. I entered the building, yes, we had a key because my wife worked there, and headed straight to the offices. My objective was to install remote micro cameras and mini microphones in her office and in Bastard Bob's office. It didn't take long to accomplish, and I concealed the transmitter behind old hymnals in the supply closet across the hall. The receiver was wired into my car's electrical system, enabling me to monitor their conversations and activities whenever they were in their offices. While I didn't expect much activity at the church, I was confident that observing them and listening to their conversations for a few days would yield valuable information. After ensuring everything was functioning correctly, I searched through her desk but found nothing noteworthy. However, I noticed a significant asterisk on her calendar for Monday, aligning with what I had overheard on Friday. I prepared accordingly. Next, I investigated Bastard Bob's office but had little success finding incriminating evidence until a last-minute revelation struck me, inspired by my surroundings. After all, I was in a church. I searched through filing cabinets for receipts of church expenditures. Sure enough, I discovered a file containing receipts for the La Quinta Inn in Roswell. Some were from late 2005, and others from the spring of 2006. Aware that I was pushing my luck by lingering, I quickly made copies of the receipts and restored everything to its original state before leaving. I drove to the golf course, parked in my usual spot, and entered the clubhouse to ensure my presence was noted. I settled at a table, nursing a Sprite for a couple of hours. Scrutinizing the bills, I realized that the two from late 2005 were both on Mondays, coinciding with dates when I attended a conference at CBS headquarters in New York. What infuriated me the most was Bastard Bob's audacity to charge those rooms to the church under the label of conference room rental for meetings. He was having an affair with my wife in a motel, and I had unknowingly footed the bill. Though we had contributed to the church financially, I vowed not to contribute any longer. Their situation was dire now. With just a bit more evidence, their fate would be sealed. I was certain this had been ongoing for nearly a year, if not longer, aligning with suspicions I had entertained earlier. My hunch was that Bastard Bob had been involved with her even before she started working for him. Initially, she held a good position at the Telfor Corporation as a receptionist. However, she eagerly embraced the opportunity to work for the church, citing its proximity to home and her desire to serve. She claimed the pay was comparable to her previous job, but it was evident she was more enticed by the extra perks. My anger was escalating by the minute. I couldn't fathom how naive I had been. It infuriated me, but it also sickened me to realize that the woman I had cherished throughout our marriage could betray me without a second thought. I was determined to make them pay. Feeling it was time to delve deeper into my investigation, I retrieved my iPod from the car and tuned it to pick up the frequency of the receiver I had placed in the trunk. As I scrolled through the data, I watched as Bastard Bob made his way into his office and dialed a number. I regretted not bugging his phone directly, realizing I would only hear one side of the conversation, but decided it was better than nothing. I listened in as Bob spoke. "Yes, Sharon, I'm at the church. I came right after you called. What's troubling you so much?" There was a pause, presumably for Sharon's reply, which I couldn't hear. Bob continued, querying, "Oh, really? Has he done that before?" Another pause followed, allowing Sharon to respond. Bob pressed on, "I see. What do you think triggered his reaction?" Yet another pause indicated Sharon's explanation. Bob seemed concerned. "You don't suppose he's suspicious of us, do you, Sharon?" After a pause, Bob chuckled. "All right, well, you can get back at him on Monday night." He then hung up the phone and sat in deep thought. Just before I turned off the receiver, I caught him muttering something under his breath. I made sure to record that muttering, thinking it might be useful later. With the transmission ended, I headed home, anticipating a frosty reception upon arrival. I busied myself with chores, mowing the lawn and cleaning the basement in an attempt to ease the tension. My wife Sharon was silent when I entered, but the air was thick with unspoken words. At dinner, Sharon couldn't hold back any longer. "Dick, what's going on with you lately? Why have you been acting this way?" I retorted, "Sharon, considering you locked me out of our bedroom last night, I think you should be pondering your actions. It's rare for me to go out with the guys, and the one time I do, you explode. This situation is on you." Her frustration boiled over. "Damn you," she snapped. I met her anger calmly. "Is that how a devout Christian woman should speak? Your actions hardly reflect your professed beliefs." "Oh my goodness." Her expression was unmistakable. Guilt was plastered all over her face so thickly that anyone seeing her would have known she was unfaithful. How she could have believed I wouldn't notice, I don't understand. I'll admit, though, she did manage to recover smoothly and eventually excused herself from the table. But I couldn't help thinking, when I reveal the truth, her recovery won't be so graceful. Later, she entered the family room, where I was watching television. Confidentially, it was Fox News, attempting to find balanced news coverage. Her eyes seemed a bit swollen, suggesting she might have shed some tears. The remainder of the evening proceeded without any major incident. And when I was ready for bed, I simply walked down the hall to the spare bedroom and turned in. A few minutes later, she entered the room and stood there. "What's the matter?" I inquired. "Aren't you going to join me in bed?" she asked. "Nope. You made it clear that intimacy wasn't on the agenda, so I might as well sleep alone and get a good night's rest," I replied. With that, she hurriedly left the room in tears. Frankly, I felt indifferent. Sunday morning, she woke me at 8 a.m., dressed for church, and asked if I intended to join her. I responded, "No, I'm staying home today. You go ahead and be the model church lady, and I'll enjoy a relaxing day here." Once again, I noticed that familiar expression on her face. I sensed she was starting to grasp the situation, but she managed to compose herself once more. However, this time, as she turned and left the room, I thought I detected a hint of sadness in her eyes. A while later, I heard her car drive off. Later, she attempted to initiate a conversation, but I brushed her off, insisting she leave me alone. That concluded the day, and we both retreated to our separate spaces. Monday morning, I left the house without encountering or speaking to her. As I was leaving, my phone rang and tearfully she apologized, expressing her love and lamenting the situation. "We'll discuss everything when I return home tonight," I replied before ending the call. I informed my boss that I would still be off for the day but would handle the Monday night football game as planned. He was pleased with my availability and inquired about my well-being, to which I responded with a generic, "as good as can be expected." My next destination was the La Quinta Inn in Roswell. At the lobby, I approached a young man named Kevin, who was stationed behind the check-in desk. I explained my situation candidly, stating that I suspected my wife of infidelity and that she would likely be at the motel that night with another man. Despite his initial skepticism, I offered him a deal. If he allowed me to place a microphone in the room to record their conversation, I would provide him with a couple of tickets to the next Falcons game. He negotiated for 4 tickets, which I agreed to, knowing I had access to them through the station. Eventually, he handed me the key to the only Whirlpool suite available. He was unaware that I planned not only to install a couple of mini microphones, but also to position a pair of micro cameras, much like the ones I had set up in the church offices. Additionally, I inserted a bug into the phone line to capture both sides of their conversations. After setting everything up, I conducted a test to ensure the transmission was clear, and the views from both the Whirlpool and the bed were satisfactory. Confident in the setup, I confirmed that the devices were discreetly hidden and exited the room. On my way out, I returned the key to Kevin at the front desk and handed him the tickets for next week's game, as promised. "Thanks, Kevin. I hope this all goes smoothly. Enjoy the game." With ample time to spare, I attended to several tasks I needed to address. I visited our bank and obtained cashier's checks for half of the funds from both our checking and savings accounts. I then proceeded to cancel our joint credit cards. Following that, I contacted my broker and arranged a meeting shortly after lunch to make adjustments to our investment accounts. He assured me everything would be prepared by the time I arrived. Next, I reached out to my attorney to discuss divorce proceedings and other related matters. We scheduled an appointment for later that afternoon when he would be available to meet with me. Finally, I drove to Planter National Bank in Marietta, Georgia, where I opened new accounts solely in my name and deposited the cashier's checks. I went for lunch in Marietta, although I had little appetite. Afterward, I drove to my broker's office to review the documents he had prepared. Essentially, they divided our investment portfolio equally, avoiding the need to sell assets and incur unnecessary tax liabilities. All that remained was for both Sharon and me to sign the papers. Taking the documents with me, I proceeded to meet my attorney. We discussed the divorce papers he had drafted. I agreed to pursue a no-fault divorce, proposing an equal split of assets if Sharon signed them promptly. However, in case she hesitated, I instructed him to include a provision for filing on grounds of adultery. I felt confident she would sign without delay. With everything arranged, all I needed was a quick dinner before heading to the station for the Monday Night Football broadcast. After leaving the attorney's office, I switched my cell phone back on and found a couple of messages from Sharon. In her messages, she expressed concern about my behavior and urged me to return home to discuss it before the game. Reading her messages, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and disbelief. Despite knowing her plans for the evening, she still reached out with words of love and worry. It dawned on me that I had been incredibly naive to love and trust her so completely. I had made a decision. The only chance of salvaging our marriage was if she didn't show up at the motel tonight. If she chose not to go, it would indicate that she cared enough to try to fix things, recognizing the trouble our marriage was in. At 8 p.m., I engaged the automated system for the evening's broadcast, which meant Monday Night Football was on the air. Concurrently, I prepared to monitor my setup in the motel room remotely. At exactly 8:15, Bob entered the room and made a phone call. "Hey, I've arrived. Can you come over as soon as possible?" He spoke into the phone. "I'll be there shortly," came the reply. After the call ended, he murmured something else, which I noted to review later for details. "This could be the end of my marriage," I mused, though I doubted any change in our situation. The pain was real, fueling my resolve for some form of retribution. I went through my list of contacts, reaching out to each one. It took some time, but eventually I contacted everyone necessary. By that time, Sharon had made it to the motel, so I turned my attention back to the surveillance. Their conversation was deeply personal and intimate, highlighting the complexity and secrecy of their relationship. The depth of their involvement was clear, and the situation was far from what anyone would have expected, especially given their public personas. Listening to them, I felt a mix of emotions. The discovery was shocking, especially considering their roles in the community. It was a moment of realization about the extent of their actions and the implications for all involved. I felt sick, my wife, a pastor, and a church secretary, sinking into such depravity. In the moments that followed, I realized just how twisted they were. What they were about to receive tonight, they deserved. They deserved it all. She was on the bed in a compromising position, her posture suggesting readiness for an intimate encounter. The camera caught every detail, including the anticipation visible on her face just before their interaction became more physical. Her exclamations were filled with mixed emotions, passion, and surprise as she engaged in the moment. "Oh, this is intense," she might have said, her voice reflecting the depth of their engagement. "This is what I needed," she added, affirming her consent and participation. He responded with boldness, perhaps too caught up in the moment. "This will be unforgettable," he claimed, omitting any crass references to me. Her responses to his actions were vocal, a series of sounds that conveyed her intense experience. "Continue, this is what I want," she urged, signaling her nearing peak of emotion. His final movements were decisive, marking a moment of closure for them, a moment that symbolized the end of one chapter for me and the beginning of another, filled with pain and the drive for retribution. After a moment, the scene shifted, showing a continuation of their engagement with renewed energy. Her reactions were vocal and repetitive, indicating the intensity of her experience. It was clear that what transpired was beyond my ability to comprehend fully or match. Her satisfaction was something I could never provide in the way he could. This realization was crushing, highlighting a disparity in our desires and capacities. The performance continued beyond what I could bear to witness. As they paused, presumably for a break, the reality of their connection and my exclusion from it sank in deeper. Choosing to act, I switched the broadcast to a mode that would reveal their actions to a wider audience, a decision driven by a mix of hurt and a desire for vindication. As the phone started to ring, signaling the beginning of the fallout, I steeled myself against the incoming storm, ready to face the consequences of exposing a hidden truth. I dialed Sharon's number, my heart pounding as the dial tone echoed through the silent room. On the other end, I could almost picture her glancing at the caller ID with a dismissive smirk. "It's Dick," Sharon said, presumably to Bob, her voice laced with defiance. "This time I'm not answering. Let's see how he likes that. Keep going, honey, while he's on the line." Frustrated, I disconnected and tried again, my determination growing. This time, Sharon seemed to reconsider, her voice barely audible as she decided, "Guess I better take it." Before she fumbled for her phone, "Hello, Dick," she answered, her tone cold and unwelcoming. "Sharon, where are you?" "What are you up to?" I pressed, seeking any hint of truth in her voice. "I decided to go shopping since you didn't call earlier. Now I'm just grabbing a bite before heading home," she lied smoothly, her words a sharp contrast to the reality I knew. "Shopping at this hour?" I pushed further, skepticism coloring my tone. "Yeah, and I plan to splurge," she shot back, defiance in her voice. "Fantastic, Sharon. Thanks for being such a wonderful wife," I replied, the sarcasm in my voice barely masking the pain. "Don't talk to me like that, you jerk. I don't know what's gotten into you." "Goodbye," she snapped, ending the call with a finality that stung. As I pondered their continuing betrayal, a plan formed in my mind. I decided to interrupt their tryst, not with another direct call to Sharon, knowing she wouldn't answer, but by calling the motel directly. "Kevin, it's Dick. Watching Monday Night Football?" "No." "Well, you might want to start. Could you ring the Whirlpool suite for me?" I asked, masking my turmoil with casual conversation. After a brief pause, Bob's voice came through. "Hey, what do you want, Dick?" It was my turn to confront them. "Bastard Bob, let me speak to Sharon, will you?" I demanded, a calm facade over my boiling anger. Sharon's confused voice then joined. "Dick, why are you calling here?" "Sharon, I know everything. The cheating, the lies. I'm filing for divorce and you're getting out. And Bob, you're not getting off easy either, I declared, my voice steady with resolve. What's wrong with you, Dick? I can't understand you lately, she retorted, her confusion feeding her reply. It's over, Sharon. Maybe you should tune into Monday Night Football for a change. Enjoy the show. Goodbye, I said, hanging up, my decision final and my heart heavy with the weight of ending. On the live monitor, I watched her switch on the TV and witnessed the shocking video of her and Bastard Bob. With a delayed reaction, she saw what the entire Atlanta area had witnessed. Oh no, oh no, oh no, she repeated as she hastily dressed and fled the room. Bastard Bob was eager to leave, cursing all the while. I will destroy that son of a witch, he muttered. Bastard Bob should watch what he mumbles. It could come back to haunt him. Once they left, I powered down the monitors and let the video play to the end. Then I switched off the live assist mode and returned the system to fully automated broadcast mode. Grabbing the tape, I left the broadcast booth, likely for the last time, taking a few personal items from my desk. Now you're caught up. I spent the rest of the night at Frankie's, and yes, my halftime show was the hot topic. After the game, I hailed a cab home. Sharon was sitting in the darkened living room when I arrived, the phone off the hook, tears evident. She wept profusely, but I was indifferent. It was over for me. How could you do this to me, Dick? She sobbed. After all these years together, how? No, Sharon, I countered. The real question is, how could you do this to me? I'm drunk. I'm going to bed, we'll talk tomorrow, I said. She remained on the sofa. The next morning, looking exhausted, it seemed she hadn't slept, but again, I didn't care. She brought this upon herself. I replaced the phone on the hook, and it immediately began to ring. For the next hour and a half, I fielded calls from family, friends, church members, my former boss, and both of my daughters. They were deeply disturbed by what they witnessed, and nothing I said could soothe them. I understood it was harsh for them to witness, but they're adults and will eventually overcome it. Mrs. Bastard Bob called too, inquiring if I had a tape of the incident. I assured her I kept a copy in safekeeping and would provide it if needed. Clearly, everyone I contacted had seen the Monday Night Football halftime show. Some were upset due to its explicit content, while others, like her parents, criticized me for exposing her. However, most were supportive and sympathetic, recognizing the difficulty of the situation. It was a challenging experience, but a consequence I had to face for my actions. Sharon remained tearful throughout. Eventually, I left the phone off the hook and made myself coffee. Returning, I offered her some and presented the divorce papers and investment documents for her to sign. I'm filing for divorce, Sharon, I said firmly. After what I discovered and saw last night, it's clear to me that you've been unfaithful for quite some time. I can't stay in this marriage knowing that. The documents I've prepared are for a no-fault divorce, and I'm proposing we split everything equally. I need you to sign the divorce papers and the agreement on how we'll divide our investments today. There's no room for negotiation on this. The terms I've offered are more than fair. You have until 5 p.m. today to get legal advice and agree to my terms. If you don't, after 5:01 p.m., I'll proceed with filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and for a division of property that reflects our individual contributions and earnings, which would largely benefit me. This is your best option. I want to make it clear that contesting this by alleging adultery would be unwise. It will become public knowledge in Atlanta, and you'll be seen for what you've done with Bob. You need to consider this carefully, Sharon. Take this offer. It's the best way forward for both of us. Dick, I still love you. I want to fix our marriage. Can't we try to work things out? Sharon pleaded. The problem isn't about love, it's about your choices and actions. You've put someone else before our marriage, and I can't overlook that. You need to sort this out and talk to your lawyer as soon as possible. After some time, Sharon came back with the documents signed. My lawyer reviewed everything and agrees that your offer is fair under the circumstances, she informed me, her voice carrying a mix of resignation and hope. Dick, is there any chance we could talk? I'd like to explain myself and see if there's any possibility for us to reconcile, she added, looking for a glimmer of hope. I decided to hear her out, curious about her reasoning and whether this was an isolated incident or indicative of deeper issues in our relationship. We sat at the kitchen table, and she recounted everything to me. There were no others involved. It began shortly before she started working for Bastard Bob. She admitted she didn't know why, as she was content with me, but something about Bastard Bob attracted her, perhaps his charisma. She believed he loved her. I acknowledged his charisma, but shattered her illusion when I played back 2 sound bites I'd saved of him. The first was from that initial day. That idiotic woman better keep her affair with me hidden from her husband. Despite her sweet and willing nature, she'll be gone soon. It was easy to seduce her, but she needs to go. The second was from just before her arrival. "I'll ravage her tonight and fire her tomorrow. If she protests, I'll threaten to expose her to Dick. I can't risk him finding out." So Sharon, you not only wrecked our marriage, but misjudged Bastard Bob's feelings. To him, you were just a toy, a demeaned witch. I saw how he treated you, and how you enjoyed it. I never satisfied you like that because I saw you as a loving wife, not a witch. There's no way I can stay married to you. You violated our vows, and I can't ignore that. Plus, you'd never be content with me again. No matter our love, we can't overcome the damage you caused. She remained seated, tears flowing, acknowledging the truth in my words. Eventually, she signed both sets of papers. I informed her I'd be relocating, offering her time to find new accommodations. Financially, I doubted she could maintain the house, and I had no desire to reside there amidst countless memories. Thus, our agreement stipulated the house's sale, with proceeds split equally, like our other assets. After collecting my papers and pre-packed bags, I departed, dropping off documents at my broker's before settling in a hotel for the night. The following day, I met with my attorney, who promptly filed the divorce papers with the County Superior Court. We also addressed my legal woes at the station and with the FCC. He outlined potential consequences, including hefty fines and career repercussions. While jail seemed unlikely, significant financial penalties loomed, signaling an end to my broadcasting career. Within days, repercussions materialized. The FCC served me, initiating a legal battle that would drain my savings, amounting to nearly a year's salary. Even worse, my broadcast license got revoked, barring me from my profession for 2 years. The silver lining, however, came from TT, who, despite the illegal and spiteful nature of my actions, offered me a job with responsibilities that complied with FCC restrictions. It turned out TT had sympathy for me, likely influenced by his own bitter divorce experience with Henry's daughter and Peter's sister. I found some appreciation for TT in that regard. Bastard Bob confronted me once at Frankie's, seemingly ready for a physical altercation. However, I ended up pinning him down, asserting my dominance. "Now, Bastard Bob, I don't want to hear from you again, is that clear?" I asserted. His response, "Forget you." Perhaps he needed another reminder, so I nudged him in the ribs. "Bastard Bob, I have an audio recording of you threatening me. If I take it to the police, I could get a restraining order against you and press assault charges. With that evidence, you might end up in prison. Is that what you want?" I questioned. He shook his head in refusal. As I delivered one final kick for good measure, I remarked, "Well, I suppose this marks the end of our conversation. Although he's no longer a pastor, he's still the same despicable person. He got ousted from the church, and his ordination was revoked by the denomination. Last I heard, he found employment at a city travel agency. Despite his charisma, he'll need to make ends meet, especially since his wife successfully sued him for divorce on grounds of adultery, resulting in a substantial settlement against him. My incriminating tape likely played a significant role in her victory, despite its questionable legality. I'm moving forward with my life. While it's not perfect, I'm discovering ways to find happiness. I've casually dated a few women in recent months, but haven't committed to any serious relationships. I've abstained from sexual activity because I believe in reserving it for marriage, steadfast in my values, even if others disagree. When I encounter the right partner, I'll marry her, and together we'll experience the joys of intimacy as intended. I'm patient, confident that the right person will come along in due time, and I'm willing to wait until then. I occasionally encounter Sharon at events, like Stephanie's college graduation and Melanie's baby's baptism. While I maintain civility, I've made it clear that my presence isn't for her benefit. I'm not interested in friendship or any form of connection. It's evident that she's not content. I can sense her emotional turmoil stemming from our breakup, and she likely regrets her actions. However, her regret doesn't change the fact that she betrayed our marriage by becoming involved with another man. While some might forgive such transgressions, my moral code is firm, leaving little room for leniency. She'll have to live with the knowledge that she sacrificed a life with me for her affair with Bastard Bob. Despite my profound love for her, she discarded it all. Moreover, her involvement in the infamous Monday Night Football incident has tarnished her reputation irreparably. Everyone who witnessed it now views her as promiscuous. I've heard she receives numerous date offers, but to her credit, she hasn't accepted any. It must be agonizing to know that most of these men view her as nothing more than a conquest. It's not a dignified way to navigate life, but it's a consequence of her actions. She brought it upon herself.
Story 2.
My cheating ex stalked me for over 50 years, even showed up at my parents' door with a knife threat. I, 55 male, met her 55 female when we were both 8 years old. We initially went on a lot of playdates and to each other's birthday parties because our moms and subsequently our dads got along really well. Her dad was rich, a president of a technology company. My dad was upper middle class and not hurting for money himself at this point. Julie had long brown hair. She had these big pale blue eyes that would blast me in my stomach every time our eyes met. My little self had no idea what was going on. In middle school, we were both goth emo kids and outcasts. Rip Ian Curtis. She had short black hair and was kind of pudgy. I was a 6 feet tall skinny guy. I mowed lawns all summer and saved up some money. I bought her a ceramic unicorn. When I asked her to go steady with me, I was sure she'd say yes, and she did. Around the end of 7th grade, she decided she wanted to change her style and told me that she was going to change her social circle. She made it clear that I would need to evolve with her or be left behind, so I changed too. By the end of our sophomore year in high school, she had a major glow-up. She was physically very fit from swimming. She had grown her hair long and dyed it blonde. I had a glow-up myself from orthodontics, lifting weights with the football team and running track and field. I think I could have played football, but Julie thought that only idiots played football, and I didn't feel strongly about it either way. Julie had guys after her, but she was loyal, or so I thought. She was publicly loyal, at least. I later learned that she was going to second base with guys from other schools at house parties, but this was in the future, and I was oblivious at the time. I had girls after me too, but Julie would run them off. She'd give them a subtle warning to begin with, and then she'd pretty much eviscerate them socially if they didn't back off. One girl got messed with so bad that she didn't come back to school. I still don't know the details of that. I didn't really want any of them because, quite frankly, Julie was way better looking, and she knew it. The first major trouble I had with her was at senior prom. I was coming out of the restroom and some girls came up to me saying, "I'm so sorry," and "What are you going to do?" I asked them what they meant, and they told me Julie had slow danced with another guy and kissed him on the dance floor. I confronted her about it, and she convinced me it was non-consensual. I started to go look for the guy to beat the piss out of him, but she pulled me back and told me that we were going to leave to go to a hotel. She had arranged a fancy hotel reservation, and she told me we were going to go all the way that night. We did. I can verify that she was a virgin when we did it, and so was I. We graduated and went to the same college. I majored in computer science, and she majored in art history. I would make fun of her for it. I won a lottery to get a sought-after dorm room. It was a little bigger than a normal dorm room, but what made it so sought-after was that it had its own small private bathroom. Julie, of course, lived in a fancy condo very near campus. She insisted on buying brand new hardwood furniture for my room. She got me a fancy desk chair that was surplus from her dad's office, Herman Miller. Dang, I miss that chair. She had always bought clothes for me, even though I told her not to. I bought her little gifts too. 3rd year in college, I was studying in the library. I got a call from a friend telling me that he was sorry that Julie and I had broken up, and asked me if I wanted to come to a party and that there'd be girls there. I was like, whoa, what the F are you talking about? He told me he saw Julie with some guy at a party making out heavily, second base, remember, and that she pulled him out of the party to her car. My friend asked Julie, what about OP? And she told him we were broken up. We hung up and I took a chance and went to Julie's condo to get to the bottom of it all. I had a key. I went in and loud music was playing. I went back to the bedroom and there they were. The thing that still sticks with me to this day was the fact that she had his shirt over his head and her lipstick was smeared on his chest. I yelled, "What the F?" and she stared at me with a goofy look on her dumb, drunken face. I grabbed the nearest breakable thing, which turned out to be the ceramic unicorn I got her, and whipped it at her makeup table, smashing it. I yelled, "Phew, Julie, we are done," and stormed out of there with her calling after me. The next day, she called and was apologetic but explained that she wanted to tell me that we were on a break and it's okay. I didn't know what on a break meant, and I thought it meant the same thing as broken up, so I was like, no crap, we on a break, and hung up on her. She started dating this guy who had a reputation as an F-boy. They were apparently in an open relationship, and she bought clothes and stuff for him like she did me, and she was seen with other guys but again, with him. I was basically eating my heart out and trying to get the best grades possible. I went out, but I didn't have any girlfriends. I just partied occasionally to cope. I got rid of everything that reminded me of her. I donated all of the furniture and replaced it with thrift store particle board crap. I had to start dressing in thrift store clothes too because I got rid of all the clothes she bought me. It was about half of my wardrobe. I deleted all of our photos and threw them away. I told my parents what had happened, and they, and Julie's parents, wisely stayed out of it. I told my parents and friends not to talk about her with me. She was a figment of my imagination. This is when someone told me about her going to second base with guys at parties during high school. Approximately 9 months later, she broke up with F-boy. The rumor was that he effed a girl in front of a bunch of people in public at a party. She was embarrassed and dumped him. She came to me not long after. It was unexpected, and when I opened the door, there she was, looking very beautiful with a bright smile on her face and the glued-together unicorn in her hands. I was stunned as she walked in. I totally did not expect her. She asked if I had gotten robbed. All the stuff she bought me was gone. I told her that if she wanted the furniture, she better go to Goodwill and get it back. She looked hurt. She showed me the unicorn like it was a metaphor for a repaired relationship. I told her it looked like crap and that we were broken up. She explained what on a break meant. I told her, I don't give an F, we're broken up. She started crying, but I told her to leave. She would then show up at my classes and try to convince me that we were soulmates who were destined to be together. I told her that soulmates don't F other dudes. She told our mutual friends, and they started pressuring me to get back with her because she's inconsolable. She sent me notes and letters, trash. She sent me flowers and candy like I was some insulted 1950 seconds housewife trash. Just being around her hurt me physically, so I transferred out at the end of the semester, ghosting her. I probably should have made other arrangements because I had to go to school 2 more years because a bunch of credits didn't transfer at the new school. I was signed up for a bunch of classes I already took and ended up barely passing them because I was in my bed all the time. My roommate, not a friend at the time, just assigned to the same dorm room, got annoyed that I was always there and a little worried about my attitude, so he called the campus police on me. I didn't get in trouble, but I did have to go see a counselor, who told me I was having a major depressive episode and PTSD, and that Julie had some kind of personality disorder or was a sociopath who had groomed me and manipulated me into dependence on her. I don't know if that's all true, but the Zoloft helped. I heard that Julie came looking for me at my parents' home. She kept asking them where I was and if she could contact me. They kept telling her no, but she got more and more belligerent and hysterical with them until Julie's parents told her to stop or they would institutionalize her. I graduated, got a job, got transferred to Singapore, where I met my now wife. That's a whole other story. I was a passport bro before there were passport bros, apparently. I was 35 when we got married, and she was 26. We moved back to the USA and had 3 kids. We're doing great. Fast forward to yesterday. I only use Facebook to occasionally upload family pictures, but mostly post amusing stuff that comes out of my head. For example, I found an entire bowl of cereal in the sink today, so I guess we're Bezos rich now. I got a Facebook message from Julie. It had a photo of the unicorn, and in it, she apologized for what she did and for hurting me, and that she will never get over me. I didn't write back. I would never insult my wife like that. I blocked Julie. But what surprised me was my reaction to it. Blinding effing rage. I effing punched the wall, all denting the sheetrock, and I was so mad that tears came down my face, gritting my teeth. Major headache. I swear if Julie were there in front of me, I would have curb-stomped her into the death penalty. I'm not a violent guy. I really am not. I lied to my wife and told her I had to work late, and I went on a long, vigorous walk downtown to get my mind off of it. I couldn't go home like this. Later, I'm calm and feeling nothing, but my reaction puzzles me. Isn't the opposite of love indifference? I just don't understand how that happened. I guess the solution is more therapy and Zoloft. Let's see what the community thinks the solution should be. First up, forget her. She was being manipulative and hurtful then, and she's still being manipulative now. Enjoy your happy life and don't let ghosts haunt you. Your story would make a great 80-second style coming-of-age movie script. The Uppy replied, "Ha, probably too cliché. Yeah, I just can't believe I reacted like that. I don't know why I reacted that way. I mean, right now I'm fine with it. I don't feel anything. Maybe I just needed to let off steam. If she finds some other way to contact me, am I going to be like this again? That's my worry, that she'll show up at my door and I'll end up going to prison for murder." Someone else chimes in. "You should tell the story to your wife and let her know how you feel. I guarantee that this will allow the indifference to kick in towards Julie and will have a huge bonding effect with your wife." What a witch she is. Good luck, man. The Uppy replies, "I will tell her. I just don't want my wife to feel threatened or anything, because that will mean that my wife knows that another woman has gotten under my skin. But not in a good way. I said this elsewhere, but I'll call up and talk to someone." "Uppy, it sounds like you've just been through a lot. And it's completely understandable that receiving a message from Julie after all these years stirred up strong emotions. I'm sorry for all you've been through. Julie is a huge part of your past. It's commendable that you blocked her and took some time to cool off. Sharing your feelings with your wife might be a good idea. Open communication is crucial in relationships, and letting your wife know how you reacted and why can strengthen your bond. It doesn't necessarily mean that another woman has gotten under your skin in a threatening way. It's more about addressing and processing past emotions. Julie sure did have some serious guts coming back twice, and with that dreaded, patched-up, good-for-nothing unicorn. What do you think? Would you have had the same reaction? Would you tell your spouse about it? New update. So, upon recommendations from the comments on my first post, I talked to my wife about Julie. She was aware of Julie before we got married, but I downplayed the effect the breakup had on me. I just told my wife that she cheated on me and I ended it, but not how much it broke me at the time. I showed her my Reddit post and told her about getting the Facebook message from Julie and what I did. She was concerned and told me that she agreed with most of you that I should go and talk with someone about it. I assured my wife that our 21 years together and 3 kids wasn't a practice run so I could get back together with Julie, and she laughed. She knows I hate Julie. My wife mentioned something that I should have thought of, that Julie probably emailed my Facebook email address. For clarity, I set up a free email address for Facebook notifications. I never check it. In order to log on, I had to reset the password. I did, and there was an email from Julie. I decided to read it after downing a gin and tonic, and the crazy train derailed. First of all, keep in mind that the Julie I knew in high school was a beautiful, nice girl, but the Julie I discovered after catching her cheating with another guy was a lying liar who lies. After catching her and subsequently learning that she was going to second base with other dudes behind my back all through high school and hooking up with dudes behind my back in college, I came to the conclusion that I couldn't trust one word that oozed out of that dank hole in the middle of her dumb effing face. So I read her email with extreme skepticism. In her email, she said that after I abandoned her at the end of junior year, she was broken and lost, and that her world ended and drama. Her soulmate had abandoned her. She explained that she wanted to experience the sexual freedom that college life had to offer, and wanted me to do the same, so she declared that we were on a break. She was hoping for us to come together with what we had learned sexually and have a better sex life, which is the dumbest effing thing I have ever heard. So apparently her half-butt plan was for me to become a sex king while we were on a break and pass the benefits on to her, and she would learn all kinds of new nasty things and bring them to me. She said that when our break was over and she came back to me, she realized that I didn't know what on a break meant. And I thought we were broken up, and that she had hurt me a lot. She realized this when she came to my place and saw I had gotten rid of everything that had to do with her, gifts, photos, furniture, etc. She realized she had lost me, and her world shattered. She was further hurt when I abandoned us, and she was so mentally damaged that she had to spend time in an institution afterward. She moved to Europe to be a fashion model. I missed the European fashion model booth on career day at school. Maybe it was in the back between the rock star booth and the billionaire playboy booth. She got involved in the party lifestyle there, never married, and returned to the USA after her last long-term fiancé broke it off with her. She moved in with her parents to help them because they're getting old, and saw a photo of us in a box that she was moving and wanted to call me. This is what sent a chill down my spine. She said she wants to get together for a drink and to go over old times. She said she forgives me for abandoning us and moving on with my life without her. She says she still believes we are soulmates and that our story is not over. She wrote to me to please respond. Is there such a thing as eye sanitizer? I had already made an appointment with my son's psychiatrist. He has severe autism. I called up my dad because my mom died 8 months ago, and he was mourning her. My older brother is also a widower, and they are living together now. My dad is 91, and he was married to my mom for 71 years but knew her for 77 years. I mentioned about Julie, and my dad perked up, and I asked him about her. The crazy train not only derailed but flipped end over end to crash in the middle of crazy town. My dad said he didn't tell me about this because I was so adamant at the time for them to not mention anything about Julie to me at all after I ghosted her. Julie showed up at my dad's house multiple times, begging them to tell me where I was. Finally, she showed up and held a knife to her throat, threatening to off herself if they didn't tell her. My dad restrained her, and my mom called her parents to come pick her up, and they later learned that she was put into a mental health facility. Our two families stopped communicating after that, so that part of her email was at least true. I talked with my psychiatrist, and she said that my anger outburst is indicative of PTSD, which I had been diagnosed with years before, just after I ghosted Julie. She said I pretty thoroughly cut Julie out of my life to the point where she only existed in my memories, and those faded over time, so when she contacted me, it all came rushing back. And yes, I feel embarrassed and pathetic for my dumb experience being compared to a combat veteran. She said Julie probably has some kind of cluster B disorder, which means, in her case at least, that she's the star of her own reality TV show, and we are all supporting players who better stick to her script, or else. I asked the psychiatrist if I should respond to Julie's email. She said no, that it would only add another page to the TV show script in her mind, which would encourage her to do more. She recommended therapy with a therapist that specializes in PTSD and recommended one to me. I made an appointment with them. I asked my wife, my dad, and my brother if I should respond to Julie's email. They all agreed with the psychiatrist. My brother said I should reply to her email with one word: unsubscribe. The problem is that I have a unique last name. If you Google my first, middle, and last name, you'll see that there are a handful of people in the USA with my name. I had asked a friend who's a deputy sheriff, and he said you can't get a restraining order unless you're assaulted or threatened with harm. Julie can find where I live with little effort, so I'm worried that if I don't at least email her to stay away, she'll track me down. The plot thickens in the saga of Julie. Honestly, you shouldn't even have asked if you should respond to her or not. Clearly, the answer is no. The revelation about her past actions, including a knife and a threat of self-harm, is the cherry on top of this dramatic sundae. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You know you should look away, but you just can't. I think you're probably overreacting over the fact that she'd track you down. She's probably just looking for a quick fix after all these years. If you don't fall for this trap, she'll leave you alone. Would you respond? And thank you for joining us today.
Story 3.
During our final university year, while hanging out with friends, I encountered Sarah celebrating her 21st birthday at a local Nashville club. Literally colliding with her table as I walked by, I inadvertently spilled her drink into her lap. After a few awkward moments, I apologized, and as we conversed while cleaning up, I couldn't help but ponder the concept of love at first sight. Nevertheless, I believe a unique chemistry pulled us together like a magnet. From that night onward, we commenced dating and never spent time apart. A year later, we exchanged vows, marking the beginning of our shared life. I'm Jonathan, but my friends call me Johnny. Armed with an accounting degree, I became a certified public accountant at a prominent Atlanta firm, where Sarah and I settled near our family. After gaining experience in the corporate realm, I ventured out to establish my own firm. Sarah, holding a business administration degree, supported me during the initial 2 years until the joyous news of our daughter, Angel's impending arrival. Our relationship mirrored a fairy tale, with an enduring love that persisted as we welcomed Angel into our lives. Over the subsequent decade, we embraced the routine of a typical family life, my focus on business growth, while Sarah managed household affairs and raised our daughter. Our bed life was a source of contentment, with a frequency of at least 3 times a week. Describing our connection as pure love, our feelings were deep and sensual. Avoiding experimentation or intense encounters out of mutual respect, we found joy in our shared experiences. Sarah found pleasure in lingual stimulation, a preference I gladly fulfilled, though she reserved lingual pleasure for special occasions, happening less than 10 times during our marriage. Content with our life, I refrained from pressuring her, cherishing the harmony in our relationship. Sarah's constant attentiveness, evident from the day we exchanged vows, manifested in kisses, hugs, and shared moments whenever we were together. The incredible closeness in our marriage filled every second with love. Despite friends' initial skepticism, claiming our affection wouldn't endure, they eventually recognized the uniqueness of our bond after a decade. When Angel turned 10, Sarah expressed her desire to return to work. With Angel's established routine and daily return from school at 3:30 p.m., Sarah conveyed her reluctance to stay at home daily, expressing a yearning to rejoin the workforce. After extensive discussions, we reached an agreement and formulated a plan to ensure Angel received the attention a 10-year-old girl needed. Sarah secured a position as a personal assistant to William, a lawyer 10 years her senior. The job's favorable hours allowed Sarah to be home by 4 o'clock every day, maintaining her presence for Angel. Our family grew stronger over time. Residing in a comfortable apartment within an upscale complex with country club membership, our financial stability allowed us to save for Angel's college and our retirement. We lived a blessed life, free from health, financial, and happiness concerns. As expected, our bed life underwent changes after a decade of marriage, slowing down from 3 to 4 times a week to only twice, typically on Friday and Saturday nights. While we became somewhat predictable, our love endured, and we continued to revel in our closeness. Sarah's unwavering attentiveness and displays of love persisted throughout the years, making our shared closeness more fulfilling than our physical expressions of love. Receiving spontaneous kisses and hugs, along with acknowledgement for her love, overwhelmed me. It constituted the most significant aspect of our marriage. I reciprocated the affection, but Sarah consistently ensured I understood the depth of her love. Angel joined the math club, staying after hours and returning home around 5 p.m. Simultaneously, Sarah began working late 2 nights a week, coinciding with Angel's schedule. We avoided leaving her alone at that age, ensuring our schedules matched. William, Sarah's boss, earned a promotion to senior partner in his father-in-law's firm. Consequently, Sarah worked a few extra hours on Tuesday and Thursday nights, returning home by 7 p.m. On these nights, I ensured dinner was ready for her after her long work day. Other than those 2 nights, everything in our marriage remained unchanged. My business was thriving, generating a good income as the company expanded to 45 employees. We became a well-known and respected accounting firm, becoming a target for acquisition or merger with larger firms in the area. At 15, Angel began contemplating college and her future. Sarah still worked for William and remained as attractive as when we first met. The years treated Sarah well, maintaining her slim figure, complemented by long, appealing legs and a shapely bum. Despite her attractiveness, she maintained a professional and conservative demeanor. Our lifestyle, deemed by some as boring, involved spending most of our time together at home, attending movies or family events with our daughter. We were always together as a family, never going out alone or without each other as a couple. I received a call from William, her boss, informing me that Sarah would be honored with an award at a banquet the next month, and both Angel and I were invited. I proudly accepted the invitation, revealing to Angel that her mother would receive an award for professional excellence. Since it was a surprise, they wanted us there, and usually these meetings were for staff only. We were asked to keep it a secret until the award ceremony. In the last 5 years since Sarah started working for William, she consistently delivered excellent work, contributing to her increased happiness at home and boosted self-esteem. I knew she worked hard and was well-liked in her company, and now, hearing about their desire to show appreciation made Angel and me proud. Sarah informed us about an upcoming business meeting at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, where she had to work late and give a presentation to the entire company. She looked forward to it, having spent many hours preparing in the weeks leading up to the event. At the time, she was unaware of our invitation or her award, and Angel and I kept it a secret. We could hardly wait for the event and Sarah's award. I took Angel shopping for a new dress, and I bought a new suit to ensure she would be proud of her family at the award ceremony. Sarah wore a knee-length dress with a back cutout, balancing professionalism with showcasing her beautiful curves. At 37, she remained attractive and desirable. Before the limo picked her up to make arrangements for the meeting, Angel and I hugged her, wishing her luck for her evening presentation. With 2 hours to get ready after she left, we both dressed on time and left to be at the event. About 30 minutes before Sarah's presentation, one of the hosts greeted us, seating us at a central table with a clear view of the stage. Angel and I received special treatment, with everyone expressing their love for Sarah and delight in meeting us. We felt so welcome and happy to be there for our wife and mother. The lights in the audience dimmed as the introductions began. On stage, spotlights flickered as the first speaker introduced the firm's founder, the CEO, and then William, the senior partner. William provided a concise overview of the company's successful year, and then introduced Sarah, who was tasked with sharing some of the past year's achievements. Sarah graced the stage, radiating beauty as always, and I observed Angel's pride in seeing her mother commence the presentation with a professional and practiced voice. Sarah delved into the company's excellent year, its accomplishments, and future projects, speaking for approximately 10 minutes before returning the stage to William. Before her departure, Williams embraced her, delivering a few words to the audience. He highlighted the close collaboration with Sarah over the past 5 years, emphasizing her integral role in the organization. He expressed conviction that some of the successes outlined wouldn't have been possible without her. William then honored Sarah with the Chairman's Club Award, the company's highest honor, reserved for employees going above and beyond the call of duty and recognized for their commitment. Sarah received a sizable plaque and an envelope containing a $10,000 award. With tears in her eyes, she accepted the check, embraced William, expressed gratitude to the audience, and turned to Angel and me. Our eyes welled with tears as we shared the pride in her mother's achievements, and those at our table offered hugs, creating one of our most joyful evenings. Overflowing with pride and unable to suppress our smiles, we headed for a drink as the lights came on. Taking my daughter's glass, I assured her I'd be right back. At the bar, amidst long lines, I spotted an empty one near the stage and decided to fetch a double jack and a soft drink for Angel. In high spirits, I threw $5 into the tip jar, collected my drinks, and turned to return to my table. It was precisely at that moment when my world fell apart. On the way back, something caught my eye, leading me to witness a couple behind the curtains, engaged in a lovemaking embrace. Initially deeming it out of place for such an event, I recognized the dress, the same one Sarah had worn that night. I turned once more, frozen in place, observing the couple sharing a heartfelt kiss. The embrace conveyed a familiarity beyond the moment, suggesting this wasn't their first lovemaking encounter. It felt as if I were having an out-of-body experience, standing frozen with 2 drinks in hand and my mouth agape. I watched until the couple separated, confirming that it was indeed the love of my life sharing a romantic kiss with her boss, William. In that moment, I dropped one of the drinks, drawing the lover's attention. Sarah saw me and appeared shocked. As I returned to my senses, I turned and walked back to the table with the remaining drink. Sarah caught up, explaining the situation, and in a daze, I nodded and sat quietly with a sorrowful expression. For the remainder of the evening, it was evident that I was distressed and no longer able to share in the joy around us. I witnessed more than a friendly kiss, and in fact, Sarah and I hadn't kissed so passionately in years, over 5 to be exact. Reflecting on those years and the changes that had occurred, I sensed trouble looming, though I wasn't certain of its nature at that point. Driving home, Angel and Sarah discussed the night, with Angel expressing pride in her mother. Still reeling from what I'd seen, I remained silent, lost in my own thoughts. Both girls noticed my reticence, attempting to coax me into conversation, but I maintained a persistent silence. Sarah, sensing the unease, tried to make amends with sweetness and extra affection, but I wasn't receptive. That night, I made an effort to conceal my emotions from Angel. However, being perceptive, she sensed my distress and sensibly allowed me to be with my thoughts. Before bedtime, she expressed her support, mentioning that she was available for a conversation. After a hug and a kiss, she went to bed. I silently withdrew, and shortly thereafter, Sarah joined me in the room. She inquired about my well-being, expressing concern. Despite her attempt to comfort me after a minute of silence, I chose to turn away. Apologizing for the situation, she pleaded for communication, but I lay silent, anger replacing my initial shock. I refrained from speaking, realizing any words would be hurtful and unproductive. That night, her attempts at affection went unanswered, and I endured the worst sleep. The next morning, a Saturday, I opened my eyes to sunlight, anticipating a challenging day. Recalling the distressing scene, I tried to make sense of the situation. Climbing out of bed, I went to the bathroom, washed, and brushed my teeth. Returning to the bedroom, Sarah sat up in bed, watching me and trying to act normal. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" she asked as if nothing had happened. I ignored her question, donned a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and before leaving the bedroom, I looked at her, speaking to her for the first time since the kiss. Turning to her with a hateful look, I uttered, "How long?" which she didn't answer, merely looking at her hands. I left her, heading out for breakfast and some time to think, ending the conversation feeling a little distraught. I anticipate changes and dread hearing what she's going to tell me about her affair. She knows she has to tell me the truth, because she knows if she lies, I'll know. Sarah and I have been very close, and she has never given me any reason to believe that she wants another man. I haven't noticed any change in her closeness, and she still hugs and kisses me all the time. How can she act like that when she's having an affair? I mean, if she's with him, how can she show me all this love? Can the woman I love really have an affair with William? I glanced at the clock, aware that Angel was supposed to be at school for math club by 1 p.m., realizing it was time to face it. I drove home and found Sarah on the patio with a cup of coffee, staring out at the lake. Without saying a word, I poured myself a cup, sat down next to her, and asked her those 2 words again. How long? After a few minutes of silence, I noticed tears running down Sarah's face. The revelation that followed sent a shiver down my spine and caused a stomachache so intense that I almost felt nauseous. In a soft, tearful voice, she mentioned a span of 3 years, I inquired, seeking confirmation, and she affirmed, mentioning the nights I worked late. Yes, she whispered. I sat in silence for a few minutes before finally breaking it. My attempt at understanding led to the conclusion that the 2 nights she worked late every week for the last 3 years were the only time she had been lovemaking with William. Seeking clarification, I asked if my understanding was correct. She affirmed, stating they had never engaged in such activities anywhere else, and expressing a desire to explain more when given the chance. I expressed my response, urging her to withhold any explanations. She had just disclosed her involvement with her boss 2 nights a week for the past 3 years. The arithmetic was simple, over 300 instances, assuming a minimum of twice a night. I confronted Sarah, emphasizing the gravity of her actions, over 500 times of betrayal behind my back. I questioned the possibility of any man enduring such knowledge. Tears streamed down her face onto her lap as I continued. The depth of my hurt unfolded as I reflected on the potential mockery they shared, picturing them laughing at my ignorance. Expressing my gratitude with bitter sarcasm, I acknowledged the profound humiliation and intentional pain she inflicted. The person I believed loved me had betrayed our marriage and shattered my heart, an unexpected and devastating revelation that left me profoundly wounded. She insisted, saying it wasn't as it seemed. I didn't buy it. Disrupting her attempt to explain, I instructed her to be silent. Ignoring her pleas, I stood up and left the porch. As she remained seated, crying and begging for me to stay, I maintained a composed exterior. However, internally, I felt an explosion of emotions. To gain control over my turbulent feelings, I went for a ride. The sense of betrayal was unfamiliar and overwhelming, and I needed time to process her words and decide on my course of action. I needed to talk to someone, and the only family I had left was my brother Tony. We were very close growing up, but we took different paths in life. Tony spent 5 years in a federal prison for medication trafficking and moved in dangerous circles. By comparison, I was a churchgoer, an accountant who paid too much in taxes and didn't even have a parking ticket. Tony and I didn't talk very often, but growing up, Tony always looked to me for support. I was there for him during his trial, and thanks to my political contacts, was able to get his sentence reduced from the mandatory 20 years to 5 years. That morning I called him. I inquired about Tony's well-being and caught up with him. Subsequently, I disclosed the challenging situation I was confronting. Of course, what's up? I conveyed the difficulty of the situation, disclosing that Sarah had cheated on me and I had just discovered it. Experiencing hurt and pain, I detailed how I was aimlessly driving around and emphasized the necessity of talking to someone. I apologized for burdening him with my problems. Oh man, I love Sarah and I can't believe she did this. Do you know who did it yet and what exactly? Acknowledging his disbelief and love for Sarah, I admitted that I knew who was involved but lacked all the details. I disclosed that it wasn't a one-time occurrence and expressed a strong desire for revenge against the person responsible. The intense anger I felt even made me contemplate damaging my wife. Tony offered his advice, drawing on the experiences of many friends who had gone through similar situations. He urged me to release my anger by engaging in physical activities like going to the gym or jogging. He emphasized the importance of calming down and allowing him to assist me in navigating through the challenges. Tony encouraged me to confront the situation by gathering all available information and deciding on a course of action. He assured me of his support in executing any plans I formulated. Advising me to keep my words minimal and act as normally as possible, he acknowledged the difficulty of the task. Finally, he instructed me to call him the next day with updates, assuring me of his continued assistance. Expressing gratitude, I thanked Tony for his help and conveyed my intention to call him the following day, bringing our conversation to an end. On the drive, I passed a mattress store and had my first idea. I parked in the lot and made the first move. I had no intention of leaving the marriage until Angel was in college, which meant I'd be married for the next 2 years. There was no way I was going to sleep with Sarah again, and I'd be damned if I left my bedroom. So I had my first action plan, which made me realize there was a lot more to do. After meeting with the salesperson, I told them I'd pay full price if they could deliver the 2 full-size beds I had just picked out, along with all the furniture, including the headboard and all the hardware and assembly. I paid an extra $100 to have the current king-size bed dismantled. I paid, and we arranged delivery for 4 p.m. That afternoon, I texted Angel to let her know I'd pick her up, drove to her school, and waited in the parking lot. We went to lunch, and I gently explained to her that there would be some changes in the house in the near future. During our conversation, Angel inquired about the events at dinner the previous night, expressing her awareness that something had occurred. She requested not to be kept in the dark, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the honesty we had always shared. In response, I acknowledged the fairness of her request, recognizing the difficulty of the situation and her right to know. I revealed that I had observed her mother and her boss kissing backstage, offering the perspective that it might have been a congratulatory gesture. I downplayed the significance of the kiss, suggesting it shouldn't be a cause for intense anger. Following my confrontation with her mother, she admitted to having an affair with him for 3 years, a revelation that I found difficult to comprehend. I conveyed that this revelation had forever changed our relationship. Angel then questioned whether I intended to divorce her mother. I explained to Angel that I hadn't decided on divorce yet, and that I was still working through the situation. I reassured her that we would remain married, but things would be different. I emphasized the importance of her being strong and not taking sides, reminding her that her mother loved her. I acknowledged the mistakes her mother and I had made, but expressed the desire for Angel's life not to be adversely affected by them. I asked her not to judge us and to understand that we loved her more than anything. Throughout this conversation, she was in tears. She was aware that revealing the truth had caused me pain, and though I didn't want her to feel guilty, she insisted it was necessary for Angel to understand why our lives were changing. When we returned home together, Sarah was surprised. Judging by Angel's expression, it was clear that I had shared the information. Angel, in response, gave her mother a disdainful look and retreated to her room without uttering a word. I explained to Sarah that Angel had a right to know, and it was crucial for her to comprehend the reasons behind the impending changes in our household. I suggested that Sarah explain things to Angel once she overcame the initial shock. Concerned about the future, Sarah inquired if I planned to divorce her. I assured her that it wasn't an immediate consideration, as I wanted to observe how things unfolded, especially considering Angel's well-being. However, I affirmed that significant changes were inevitable. Beginning from that day, Sarah pleaded with me to allow her to explain and implored me to understand, emphasizing that she loved me and that we were husband and wife. I confronted Sarah, pointing out that she had willingly engaged in an affair with William over 500 times without my knowledge. I expressed my disbelief that she believed there was anything she could say to gain acceptance from a self-respecting man. I questioned her perception of my strength and suggested that she hadn't thoroughly considered the consequences of her actions. I revealed that what truly hurt me was the loss of the closeness that I had once cherished and looked forward to. I declared that I could no longer share that closeness with her, and I conveyed the impact it would have on me emotionally. I stated that I would no longer go to bed with her or make love, and I expressed the sorrow I felt in losing the small gestures of affection like kisses and hugs. Acknowledging the inevitability of changes in our relationship due to her breach of marriage vows, I declared that, like her, I would no longer be faithful and would seek other lovers. This was a departure from my previous stance, as I had never considered such actions before. I concluded by asserting that she could continue seeing her lover because she would no longer receive anything from me. It was as if she had received a blow on the head and physically withdrew from my remarks. She lost her balance and dropped onto the couch. Startled, Sarah had obviously not realized the consequences of her infidelity. I communicated to Sarah that I couldn't agree to remain faithful after her betrayal, considering the magnitude of her actions. I expressed my intention to seek other relationships, a decision influenced by the pain caused by her cheating, lying, and infidelity. As the conversation unfolded, the doorbell rang, providing a timely interruption. I welcomed the installers who had arrived to remove our shared bed. I explained to Sarah that, as a result of our strained relationship, I had purchased 2 new beds to replace the old one. The installation process was already in progress. Sarah questioned the presence of the installers and the reason behind the changes. I clarified that since I had decided never to share a bed with her again, it wouldn't be fair for either of us to move into the guest room. Therefore, I had bought 2 separate beds. Our current bed was being removed, and new ones were being set up. I informed her about the option to exchange her mattress within 90 days if she didn't like the one I had chosen. In response to these revelations, Sarah inquired with surprise, "We're going to sleep in separate beds?" I explained to Sarah that it wouldn't be fair for either of us to give up our shared bedroom, especially since our closeness had come to an end. I expressed disbelief at the situation and the necessity for the changes that were taking place. In response, I reminded Sarah of her affair with her boss, emphasizing that it had occurred over 500 times behind my back. I watched as the men removed the bed we had shared for years, feeling a mix of pain and regret. The regret stemmed from being married to someone who had betrayed me so profoundly. The following day, I called my brother Tony, revealing the shocking truth about Sarah's affair with her boss. I expressed my astonishment at the revelation that she had been involved with him twice a week for the past 3 years, amounting to over 500 instances. I admitted to feeling blindsided and humiliated, uncertain about how to proceed. I sought information about the identity of the man involved in the affair. I disclosed to my brother Tony the identity of Sarah's boss, William Aston, and expressed my deep dissatisfaction with the situation. Tony sympathized, acknowledging the unfortunate circumstances. I then shared my desire for William to experience significant suffering for his role in the affair. Tony asked about my plans regarding Sarah, and I expressed my intention to divorce her once our daughter Angel was in college. I revealed my plan to make her life difficult until then, shutting her out and ensuring a lonely existence. I emphasized my determination to expose her actions and ruin her career if she attempted to initiate a divorce before Angel started college. Concerned for my well-being, Tony offered to take care of William Aston while I managed affairs at home. I cautioned him against engaging in any activities that could lead to legal trouble and insisted on handling my situation responsibly. Tony assured me that he understood and promised not to take actions that could jeopardize his own safety. We concluded the conversation with the understanding that we would talk again soon. The following weeks were stressful. At home, Sarah tried to engage me in conversation, but I refused to answer her more than a word or two. I could tell. She was frustrated and tried to help me forgive her, but I was still hurt, angry, and unyielding. I buried myself in work, came home late every night, and wasn't home on the weekends. Tensions were high, and everyone was walking on eggshells waiting for me to explode. When I came home one night after a long day at work, I found Sarah in her bed waiting to talk to me. After all these years of sleeping with the only woman I loved, I was now sleeping in a bed just a few feet away from my Sarah's. It was sad, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do this for the next 2 years, until Angel left for university. After my shower, and as I lay down in bed, Sarah initiated a conversation, asking about my day. I responded briefly with a simple, "Good." She expressed a desire to discuss some matters and acknowledged that she knew I wanted nothing to do with her. Despite that, she conveyed her love for me and expressed a willingness to make small improvements in our relationship. She proposed the idea of quitting her job, suggesting that we didn't need the extra money and that she could be more present for me. She asked for my thoughts on the matter. Despite my efforts to control my anger, her attempt to use terms of closeness triggered a rage in me. I sat up and spoke harshly, expressing indifference to her decisions and urging her to do whatever she wanted with her life. I made it clear that I no longer wanted any romantic involvement with her. Tears welled in my eyes as I conveyed the emotional impact of her actions. As I rolled over and rested my head on the pillow, I heard Sarah sobbing, realizing the depth of the pain I felt. She pleaded for an opportunity to talk, acknowledging the sorrow and regret she felt for her actions. She expressed her continued love for me, the anguish caused by our lack of physical connection, and the heartbreak from the perceived coldness between us. She confessed her uncertainty about how to fix the situation, but emphasized her desire to salvage the relationship. Sarah also mentioned the toxic tensions in the house and expressed concern for our daughter, Angel, who seemed affected by the strained atmosphere. She suggested the idea of counseling to find a way to coexist without hatred, urging me to consider it for Angel's sake, as her departure from the home was imminent. I sighed, acknowledging the fairness in Sarah's concern for Angel, realizing that our daughter was going through a difficult time. After a brief pause, surprising Sarah, I agreed to attend therapy, emphasizing that my motivation was solely for Angel's benefit, not Sarah's. Sarah, visibly moved, interpreted this as progress, and her tears shifted from sorrow to happiness. The following evening, Sarah informed me that she had found a therapist and planned to meet with her individually. The next day, she mentioned arranging a couples meeting for Friday at 3 p.m., recognizing the necessity to find a way to coexist without a prolonged divorce process. I agreed with Sarah's decision and acknowledged that living in peace was essential. Angel expressed excitement upon learning about the counseling sessions, hopeful that they might bring her family back together. Her smile, absent for weeks, reappeared. Sarah shared the news with me, stating that Angel was pleased about my agreement to attend couples counseling. Every night after work, I dined alone, intentionally avoiding spending time with Sarah. However, the absence of my daughter, my Angel, during these moments left a void. I longed for the warmth of her smile, the comfort of her hugs, and the endearing way she called me Daddy. Despite my desire to distance myself from Sarah, the yearning for a connection with my daughter tugged at my heart. Sarah went to her solo counseling session and was wiped out that evening. When I got home, I found that she had been crying, and I realized that it was probably hard to tell someone that they had cheated on our family for years. Somehow I had no sympathy or compassion for the woman who had broken my heart. My brother Tony called me later that week to tell me what was going on. He explained that he was still owed some favors from his former acquaintances, and that the debt they owed him was not in cash, but in favors for what he had done for them. He told me not to bother, that everything was in control. After contacting one of his associates, Tony explained the situation. They understood and told him they would take care of it and let him know when it was done. Tony explained that they did want to hurt him, and they wanted to leave it so he would remember it for the rest of his life. He left it in their hands, and he knew it was not going to be pretty. Tony gave them the man's name, the place where he worked, and his phone number. That was all they needed, I guess. When Sarah told William that I had found out about their affair, he was heartbroken. He loved Sarah and the way she made him feel. Apparently, they considered themselves a couple when they were together and shared their love during that brief time alone. After their affair became a habit, neither of them believed that their few hours a week could hurt anyone. They were simply two friends spending some time together. Both believed that their spouses never gave up anything or missed their love and time. It was only a few hours a week, and neither spouse missed their short time together. It was the perfect relationship that gave them the excitement and extra love that had been blunted by many years of marriage. After the initial meeting with Dr. Winters, the counselor, our session commenced. As expected, the counselor took the lead in initiating the conversation. She addressed me, expressing gratitude for my attendance, and acknowledged that Sarah had already shared her perspective during their meeting earlier in the week. Dr. Winters emphasized the importance of honesty in my responses and assured me that everything discussed during the sessions would remain confidential. She encouraged openness, reassuring me that nothing I said would be shocking to her. I nodded in acknowledgement, curious to see how the session would unfold. The counselor, Dr. Winters, prompted Sarah to share her intentions for the counseling sessions. Sarah, my unfaithful wife, turned her attention toward me, her eyes filled with tears, and expressed her desires. She conveyed a strong longing to communicate with me, rebuild our family, and restore the physical and emotional connection we once had. Her emotions were palpable, and I sensed the sincerity in her words. Although it was difficult to witness her pain over the loss of my love, I maintained composure, sitting quietly as she wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. When asked by the doctor about my goals for the sessions, I expressed a desire to eliminate the haunting significance of the number 500 from my thoughts. I noticed Sarah's reaction, a wince and averted gaze, as I mentioned the number. In response to Dr. Winter's confusion about the number's significance, I adopted a sarcastic tone, referencing Sarah's prior session with the counselor. I questioned Sarah about omitting this detail, prompting the counselor to request a more coherent explanation. I clarified that, being an accountant, numbers held particular importance to me. I revealed that, over the past 3 years, Sarah had engaged in lovemaking activities with William over 500 times without my knowledge. This revelation had left an indelible mark on my consciousness, making it the first thing that came to mind whenever the number 500 appeared. After each outburst, a period of silence ensued as emotions settled. The counselor, addressing me as Mr. Park, expressed understanding of my pain, but cautioned against using hurtful language. I offered an apology, acknowledging the necessity of expressing my pain and perspective. Sarah, in tears, repeated her apologies, and my anger subsided as I finally relaxed. In response to the counselor's question, I expressed a desire to find a path toward forgiveness for Sarah. My ultimate goal was to create a home devoid of hate and anger, especially for the sake of our daughter. I emphasized the need to live together in peace, recognizing the impact on our family. I thanked the counselor for the opportunity to share my sentiments. Over the next few weeks, I managed to speak in a friendly tone without the venom. Things at home were much better. Not good, but better. Angel was home more often. We went out to eat, went to the movies, went out with friends, and tried to be a normal couple. The only problem is that everyone noticed that there was no closeness between us at all. I never held her hand, we never kissed, and I never let her hug or touch me. Several friends asked Sarah what was wrong, because our affection was the exact opposite of what everyone had seen in the last 15 years. It was obvious that we were having a hard time, but we kept going. 2 weeks into our initial couples session, there was an intrusion at William's residence. Unidentified men entered, swiftly administered a beating without disclosing their motive, and promptly left. William was later taken to the hospital. Upon learning about William's incident, Sarah was thunderstruck, aware that I desired revenge and was somehow involved. That night, recounting how someone broke into her boss's house and attacked him, Sarah watched for a reaction. A small grin flitted across my face as I responded, "Wow, that's something," and resumed reading the book in front of me. Struck by my indifferent response, Sarah's inquiry about my feelings for William struck a nerve. Looking up, I glared at her and retorted, "Oh, I am so sorry your lover got hurt. Do you want me to send him flowers, or should we go see him, darling?" She looked away, and the conversation ended. Sarah sensed my responsibility for the incident and knew that expressing remorse for William could undo all the progress we had made. Earlier in the week, I received a text from Tony with a thumbs-up emoji marking our last contact for several months. As things cooled down, I wondered if the police would uncover their affair and question me about the attack, but that never transpired. The police put the report on an open case file and shifted their focus to other crimes. Several months passed, and as promised, I began dating and going out late. After Sarah quizzed me about my activities a few times, she realized she should mind her own business and avoid causing problems. I clarified that we were husband and wife in name only, cohabiting for the sake of our daughter. We eventually found a way to remain civil, and family life was improving. Sarah finally comprehended the extent of the hurt she had caused her husband, acknowledging the irreparable nature of the damage. To keep the family intact, I warned her that I would inform her family and friends about her affair and make her life unbearable if she pursued a divorce. Before Angel left for college, Sarah remained legally married but emotionally alone. She lacked someone to reciprocate the love she once gave through hugs, kisses, and affection, defining her relationships with 2 men. This love was now lost. Despite attending counseling alone, her husband's enjoyment with another woman intensified her sadness. Sarah, driven by vanity, selfishness, and stupidity, had destroyed her marriage and the man she loved. Angel, despite still loving her mother, reminded her that she had brought this upon herself every time she complained about her father. Angel would never forgive her mother for hurting her father, but her love for her mother endured. After Angel left for college, I returned home with divorce papers. A year earlier, I had contemplated ruining Sarah's finances, but I opted for an equitable split over the last 2 years. I forgave her, but the love I once felt was irretrievably lost. Sarah, unsurprised by the divorce papers, signed them without protest, relieved at the prospect of starting anew. Having learned her lesson, she vowed never to cheat again. The painful divorce from the woman I loved left me full of remorse for the events leading to our separation. I yearned to undo it all or find a way to forgive her, but the memory of the 500 betrayals haunted me. We sold the house and divided the equity. I moved in with Trisha, a dancer 15 years my junior, whom I had been dating. My confidence and happiness restored, I finally found peace. Sarah never abandoned hope for reconciliation and wept for weeks upon learning of my marriage to another woman. Unable to forgive herself for the damage caused by her selfishness and hubris, she dated but never recovered the lost love. Weight gain, faded looks, and bitterness characterized her lonely life. Angel and Sarah maintained closeness, but my communication with Sarah dwindled. She would never relive the love shared with her wonderful husband and bore the pain she inflicted on her loved ones. Ensuring Angel's college was funded, she became a psychologist, driven to help others. She now enjoys a happy married life. The lessons learned from this experience are profound, illustrating the lasting impact of a beautiful yet damaging past.
Story 4. Growing up in a small town, life always seemed simple and predictable. My father was a mechanic, my mother a teacher, and I was the youngest of 3 brothers who all adored fixing things in Dad's garage. I thrived on that rhythm until college threw me into an entirely different world. It was there that I discovered ambition could coexist with chaos, as I juggled engineering classes and part-time work while learning how much of life's beauty came from unpredictability. Years later, that love for organized unpredictability led me to Kirkland, Washington, a city I now call home. Here, I built a career in financial planning, a profession that suited my meticulous yet adaptable nature. As my professional life thrived, my personal relationships remained an unresolved puzzle. Despite my best efforts, something always seemed to be missing in my attempts to create lasting connections. I spent a good amount of time organizing everything before my 2-week break. Settling into my chair, I turned to the window to enjoy the view, when I heard my assistant, Melanie's cheerful voice. She asked if I was ready for the big day, joking about making sure this marriage stuck, and teasing me about my record for most marriages in a decade. I grinned, acknowledging her humor, and we talked briefly about how it had all been a pile of nonsense. She asked if I needed anything else taken care of, but I assured her everything was in order. I was grateful she suggested I take a break after Wednesday, especially with the Saturday wedding ahead. Tonight, I plan to relax at the pub before diving into the hectic Thursday and Friday. We agreed to keep the wedding low-key. Over the years, Melanie had become one of my closest friends. I brought her on shortly after joining Personal Wealth Financial almost a decade ago. I still remember her interview well. Her credentials were impressive, but when she walked in, she appeared thin, withdrawn, and clearly unwell. Despite her illness, she powered through the interview, showing the kind of resilience that made her an invaluable part of the team. I was impressed enough to bring her in for a second round. That was when I met a firecracker of a person, full of energy and character. Sure, she wasn't the picture of conventional beauty, skinny with little curve to her figure, but what she lacked in appearance, she made up for in confidence and charm. She had a beauty that many of the most beautiful women I knew could only dream of. Her husband was truly fortunate. I decided to unwind for a few hours at my go-to bar in Kirkland, Washington, just a short walk from my place, and enjoy a simple meal. Kaylee, the bartender, has been a constant presence in my life for years, playing a variety of roles. Her striking red hair framed the weathered face of a woman who had become like a second mother to me, my confidant, sounding board, and a compassionate friend. In her youth, she must have been quite attractive, but the hard life and years of smoking had left their mark on her appearance as she entered her late 40s. Still, she was a beautiful person in my eyes. She'd seen me through my lowest moments, and always knew exactly what to say when I needed comfort. The pub was sparsely filled and had the familiar smell of fried food and the atmosphere of raw emotions being soothed. As I strolled up to the bar, Kaylee looked my way and smiled. "Mr. Three Cheats to the Wind. How's my favorite customer?" "Better than I deserve, Kaylee. Are you still chained to that man of yours, or are you ready to run off with me? What, and ruin the big day this Saturday for your lovely bride?" "So, the usual, Luke?" "Yep." As Kaylee hurried to the taps, my attention was drawn to a woman sitting alone a few stools away. I'd guess she was in her mid-30s or older. She was nibbling on her bottom lip, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth, likely a reaction to the playful exchange I'd had with Kaylee. I figured I'd try to be polite and say hello. "Hey there." She furrowed her brow, her gaze sharp as she sized me up. "You don't seem drunk." I raised a brow in surprise. "Well, that's a unique way to greet someone." "No, I'm not drunk. The bartender said you were pretty hammered. I figured that meant she thought you were wasted." I chuckled lightly. "Oh, that's just her nickname for me. It's not 3 sheets to the wind, it's 3 cheats." "Wonderful. Another guy who can't control himself." She seemed to press her lip between her teeth more firmly, and the irritated look on her face told me there was some personal history behind her words. Just as I was about to respond, Kaylee set my beer down in front of me and came to my rescue. Kaylee quickly stepped in to defend me, assuring the woman that I wasn't the one who had been unfaithful. As the words sank in, a visible sadness washed over her, and her lips began to tremble. It seemed like she was on the verge of tears, so I nervously offered my hand, hoping to ease the tension and avoid any emotional outburst. She shook my hand briefly, almost as if she was afraid of contact. Then, with a self-deprecating smile, she introduced herself. "Call me been cheated on too many times to count, or Linda for short." I tried to lighten the mood with a joke. "Glad to meet you, Linda for short. Sorry, sore subject?" The humor seemed to help, and her expression softened. She admitted that it was a painful topic, but added that she had a feeling my own story might be worth hearing. I hesitated, but Kaylee nudged me, encouraging me to share. "Go on, Luke. Tell her your story," she said. Linda joined in with a playful pout. "Please?" Resigned, I smiled. All right, let me think. Where do I even start? Life doesn't always go as planned." I realized my marriage was over long before our first anniversary. Oddly, I wasn't heartbroken by the breakup, but my confidence had definitely taken a hit. In high school, during my senior year, I dated Harper, a much more experienced girl. We were set up by friends, and despite my better judgment, my hormones took over. After a game, my teammates made fun of my friendship with Aubrey, calling her a blimp, but I defended her. Aubrey wasn't model pretty, but I loved her for her personality and found her beautiful. We had a close bond, but her strong morals kept us from being more than friends. At a party hosted by Ted, Harper quickly found me. She flirted with me, and despite my initial hesitation, we ended up kissing. By the end of the night, I was deeply attracted to her. Aubrey knew right away. She was hurt, but accepted my dive into the dark side. A few weeks later, she started dating Dennis, our team center. I teased them, saying I had my hands in Dennis's lap more than she did. Aubrey wasn't amused, and Dennis told me to cool it. I apologized, feeling foolish. I was just a dumb teenage boy. I started distancing myself from Aubrey and Dennis. I was living in a way that made their light feel uncomfortable. I wanted to have fun, and they made that harder. Harper and I dated through the rest of the school year and the summer. Our physical relationship was amazing. She was hot and knew what she was doing. After a few months, I began to fall for her. In the fall, Harper went to Washington State, and I went to Purdue on a football scholarship. Despite my growing feelings for her, I knew long distance would be tough. We agreed to keep things casual, meeting up when we were home. For the next 2 years, I let my hormones lead me. Harper and I kept our connection when we were home, but we never discussed what happened when we were apart. I found myself comparing every other girl to her, and no one measured up. I missed her more each time we were apart and started calling her more often. It seemed like she was feeling the same way. By my junior year, I started maturing. The values I'd been taught as a kid crept back in. I was tired of the emptiness of my promiscuous lifestyle, and from that point on, I was only with Harper. I even started thinking about proposing. The summer before our final year of high school, I needed clarity about where Harper and I stood. "Hey, can we talk?" "Of course, Luke. What's up? You look serious." I've been doing some thinking. In the first couple of years of college, I was kind of reckless with girls, but I always knew I had feelings for you, and I knew we'd eventually end up back together. I was just tempted. and girls were easy to find. Did you feel the same way about guys? I hooked up a few times, but I always wished it was with you. No one else was the same. Yeah, I figured that, but lately it's been feeling like I'm cheating. I want to be with just one person. I haven't kissed anyone since last summer, and I hope you feel the same. I only love you, Luke. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me? Harper jumped into my lap, excited, and shouted, "Yes, yes!" We made love, then talked about our future. But then a worried look crossed her face. You don't want to rush into marriage before senior year, do you? No, maybe a few months after graduation. She seemed relieved, which I took as practicality, but it still bothered me. I also realized I never really got a clear answer about her faithfulness recently. It seemed minor then, but I should have paid attention because it would become an issue later. After graduation, Harper landed a job at a real estate agency, and I started at Personal Wealth Financial Planning. We tied the knot in December, and I thought I was content. I was eager to reconnect with my faith, but Harper showed no interest in anything spiritual. Living together revealed more about her than I expected. The first warning sign appeared right after our wedding. Harper persuaded me to cut our honeymoon short to attend a New Year's Eve party with her college friends. I barely saw her all night. She was off talking to everyone, disappearing for long stretches of time. Some of her girlfriends kept me occupied, almost as if it were their job. Later, I had to carry a passed-out Harper to the car. She was apologetic, so I let it slide. But over the next year, more issues started to build up. She had lots of evening appointments, was secretive about her work, and seemed to prioritize her friends over me. How is it possible to be married less than a year and still feel so alone? Another New Year's Eve rolled around, and I really didn't want to go to the party again, but I felt I needed to see what Harper did when I wasn't around. I decided to stay home, claiming an upset stomach. Harper seemed relieved. A few hours later, I showed up at the party. I tried to stay out of sight, but it didn't take long to spot Harper. She was surrounded by 6 guys, each taking turns kissing her passionately. Then she grabbed one of them and dragged him into a hallway leading to a practice room. The others high-fived each other like they were waiting in line. I stood there, unsure of what to do, but I had to see what was happening. I walked toward the hallway, but Amy, one of Harper's friends, blocked my way. "Luke, Harper said you were homesick." "Out of my way, Amy." "Luke, please, don't go back there." "Why? What will I see?" Amy looked terrified. "Luke, you won't like it. Please, don't. She really does love you." I pushed past her and walked to the practice room. There, I found Harper making out with the guy she'd dragged into the room, both of them starting to undress. I wanted to burst in and confront them, but instead, I quietly took a few pictures on my phone and left. Back at the apartment, I printed one of the pictures and left it on the table with my wedding ring. I packed a bag and went to a hotel for the night. It felt strange. I sat there, expecting to either cry or explode in anger, but instead, it was as if I finally had the answers to all the questions that had been building in my mind. I kept Harper in the dark for a few days while I found a small apartment. Then, I called her to set up a time to talk. "Luke, where the hell are you? How could you just leave like that?" "I'll be over tonight to talk." "Luke, please, I'm sorry for what you saw. It was—" "Shut up, Harper. We'll talk tonight. I'll be there at 7. I hung up, trying to feel something. Anything. A sense of emptiness washed over me. A little anger, a bit of wounded pride, but mostly relief. I had wasted a year, but now everything made sense. My suspicions about Harper had been right. We were never really meant to be. I remembered a conversation I'd had with my dad years ago when I asked how to know when you found the right person. He said, "It's different for everyone. Maybe when you kiss her, your knees will go weak or you'll feel this electric glow. You'll know." I'd never felt that with Harper. Sure, our kisses were passionate, but I realize now it was all physical. I never felt that deep connection my dad talked about. Surprisingly, I was okay. Disappointed, yes, but I was handling it. I arrived at the apartment around 7, walking in without knocking. Harper was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the photo and my wedding ring. When she looked up at me, her expression was one of quiet acceptance. "We're done, aren't we?" she asked. I sat down across from her. "Yes. Aren't you going to get angry or something?" "Why, should I?" "I think I would. It looks like I've finally seen the real you, Harper, and honestly, I don't believe we were right for each other. What's even clearer now is that I never truly loved you the way a husband should love his wife. And I don't think you loved me like that either. Let's end this on good terms and move forward, all right?" I was taken aback by her calmness. She simply shrugged and responded in a way that sealed everything. "I guess I wasn't really ready for marriage. I thought I was. You're the kind of guy I wanted to settle down with, and I wanted to be the wife you needed. I really did. But you're right. It just isn't me. Today, back at the bar, Linda sat quietly, absorbing everything I had shared about Harper. She was thoughtful, reflecting on her own experiences. She commented on how fortunate I was to have figured things out early in my marriage, pointing out that it took her 14 years to realize she had been living a lie. Her words carried a deep understanding of the pain that comes with facing the truth, even after so much time. While the truth could be incredibly painful, it also brought the possibility of moving on, perhaps with a bit more wisdom. As I leaned on the bar, resting my head in my hand, I looked at her, sensing she had her own story to tell. She assured me she was doing better now, but would share her story when she was ready. However, she was still curious about what had happened with me after Harper, eager to hear the rest of my story. I told her that it ended on a more hopeful note, which might offer some encouragement. She listened quietly for a moment, lost in thought, before asking if I still had any contact with Harper. I explained that I did occasionally see her. After our divorce, Harper had been diagnosed with MS, which forced her to mature quickly. She was doing well now, remarried to a good man, and seemed genuinely happy. Linda seemed relieved to hear that, but she then asked if I was the kind of person who took satisfaction in seeing karma catch up with an ex. I quickly reassured her that I wasn't. I would never wish something like MS on anyone, and despite everything, I still had positive feelings toward Harper. We had ended things on decent terms. Curious about what came next, Linda asked about the next chapter in my life, who was number 2. I couldn't help but laugh at her bluntness, which was spot on in capturing how things had gone with Zoe. I first met Zoe at a party celebrating Aubrey and Dennis, who had tied the knot right after college. Dennis, now a young VP at a large corporation, was relocating to Dallas, and we had all gathered at the Hyatt Ballroom to send them off. While I was catching up with a friend, the atmosphere seemed to shift when Zoe walked in. She had this natural elegance about her that made the room feel brighter. I later discovered she'd been featured on the cover of Maxim the previous year. She was so captivating that every man in the room, myself included, couldn't help but stare. Most of the men there were married, and their wives quickly went into protective mode. Before long, I found myself one of the only single guys left, and Zoe, noticing, made her way toward me. I tried to keep my cool as she approached, hoping my interest wouldn't be too obvious. Zoe left the party a little early, which gave me a chance to catch up with Aubrey and Dennis. Aubrey still looked as stunning as she had in high school. Maybe not as slim, but perfect in my eyes. When I approached her, she greeted me with a slight frown. She immediately raised concerns about Zoe, asking if I'd already fallen for her charm. I told her that Zoe and I had hit it off, but she seemed uneasy. Aubrey, with Dennis by her side, made it clear they cared about me and didn't want to see me get hurt. She warned me to be cautious, urging me to open my eyes and recognize a familiar pattern in my behavior. Her words stung more than I expected. I felt like she doubted my awareness of what I was doing. I assured her that I would be fine, that it was still early and we had just met. I wasn't planning on rushing anything, especially not marriage. Despite my reassurance, Aubrey pressed me to be careful. She told me Zoe was smart and successful, but asked me to promise that I would remain cautious, reminding me that I deserved someone truly worthy of me. I wanted to tell her I had already found that person, but instead I chose not to argue and let the conversation end. Zoe and I didn't waste time. We connected on all the important things and quickly became intimate. 6 months later, we were married. I made it clear that faithfulness was important to me, and she seemed to share the same commitment. I thought we had what it took for a lifetime together. Zoe ran a small modeling agency and focused on maintaining a good work-life balance. We married simply, full of hope for the future. Our home life was warm, and our intimacy life was incredible. Zoe gave me no reason to doubt her loyalty. After 3 years of bliss, we talked about starting a family. Zoe seemed excited, but I noticed she hadn't taken steps to get pregnant, like going off the pill, as we'd agreed. Still, I felt lucky to have her. Then, just when everything seemed perfect, life threw a curveball. It was a dark, rainy Monday when I got one of the worst phone calls of my life. "Aubrey, what's going on?" I answered, hearing the worry in her voice. "I don't want you to worry, but Dennis has leukemia." "Oh my God, just found out." "Yeah, the doctor says there's a lot they can do now, but still, it's a shock. Dennis is pretending to be okay, but I can see through him. Please keep us in your thoughts." "Of course, I'll be praying for him." I felt helpless, the weight of her words sinking in as I sat there, unable to make sense of it all. I could hear the fear and sadness in Aubrey's voice, even though she tried to sound hopeful. She was trying to mask her own deep anxiety, but I knew her too well. I wanted to be there for both her and Dennis, but I couldn't. We usually caught up by phone once a month, but I promised myself I'd make it weekly from now on. Though thousands of miles away, my friend needed me. The call ended, and I felt overwhelmed, drowning in worry. I stared out my office window at the rain, trying to process everything. Just then, Melanie, my assistant, entered my office, her eyes red and face flushed. I assumed she'd heard about Dennis and Aubrey, but I was wrong. "Luke, you know I love you, right? And I'd never hurt you?" "Mel, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I've been stressing all weekend about this, but you need to know. My husband and I were out for our anniversary Saturday at a jazz club downtown, and Zoe was there with another guy. I took some pictures. I'm so sorry, Lukey." The photos made it clear. Zoe was all over the guy, kissing, touching, dancing. I felt my world crumble as tears streamed down my face. First, Dennis's diagnosis, now this betrayal. Melanie hugged me tightly, apologizing for ruining their night, but I thanked her for telling me the truth. I printed the photos and prepared myself for a confrontation with Zoe. To gather some courage, I stopped by the pub. Kaylee, the bartender, helped me calm down. Some old friends were there, and two of them, football buddies, had already planned to teach Zoe's lover a lesson. I later found out they tracked him down and beat him up. Part of me wished they hadn't, but another part of me was glad. The wait for Zoe to return home felt endless. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger, regret, and hurt. When she finally walked through the door, as cheerful as ever, I was ready to confront her. She greeted me with her usual enthusiasm and tried to kiss me, but I stopped her, telling her to sit down immediately. She flinched, barely catching herself as she sat in the chair, confused by my tone. I laid the photos out on the table, one by one, and asked her if there was another way I should communicate with her. As she saw the first picture, her face went pale, and tears immediately started to fall. Though a part of me wanted to feel sympathy, my anger took over. I demanded to know what part of faithful she hadn't understood. She tried to say something, but I wasn't having it. I asked her what excuse she would give me this time. Was she going to claim it meant nothing? That it was just casual sex? I couldn't believe she was trying to justify it. She begged me not to hate her, suggesting I'd take a few days to cool off, but I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I wanted to know how many other times this had happened, how many other men she had betrayed me with. My disbelief turned into fury. I couldn't fathom how she could do this to me, especially after what had happened with Haley. Zoe tried to defend herself by claiming I didn't understand a woman like her. That was the final straw. My anger boiled over. I grabbed her by the neck, pulling her face close to mine. I called her something worse than a pig, something lower, a term unworthy of the comparison. I realized then how badly she had fooled me, and the thought of her laughing about it with her boyfriend behind my back sent a rush of disgust through me. I shoved her away, terrified of what I might do next. Her eyes were filled with fear and guilt, and as much as I wanted to feel satisfaction, it only made me more disgusted. I turned away, trying to control my shaking voice. I told her I would never understand a liar or a cheater. She had destroyed everything we had, shattered me, and shown me exactly who she was. I knew I could never trust her again. I paced the room, the sound of her sobbing in the background. I gave her one final order. I wanted her out of the house by that night. My lawyer was already working on the divorce papers, and the prenup was in effect. She had no claim on anything now. I gave her 30 minutes to pack, and I told her everything else would be handled through text. Just as I turned to leave, her desperate cries stopped me. She begged me to stay, telling me she loved only me. I paused, my back still to her. I told her I no longer loved her. When I looked at her now, all I saw was ugliness. I told her not to even try to claim she loved me. Love didn't do what she had done. She loved only herself. I told her to leave before I came back, and I warned her to tell her boyfriend to run, far and fast, back to the bar. Linda paused for a moment before speaking. Your reaction was more intense than I anticipated. Even though we've just met, I get the sense that you're typically a kind and considerate person. Kaylee quickly added, Luke is definitely kind and considerate, but betrayal brings out a different side in all of us. I'll admit, I lost my temper, I responded. But Linda, I know you've been hurt by a cheater before, so maybe you can relate. With Harper, I always knew we weren't meant to be. But with Zoe, I honestly thought she was the one. She tore me apart. I said things out of rage, trying to hurt her without crossing the line physically. But everything I said was the truth. Maybe she'll learn, maybe she won't. So what happened after that? Did you get closure? Or did you part on good terms? I calmed down after a while and we talked. If it had been a mistake, I might have tried to salvage the marriage. I'm not perfect, and I'd want forgiveness if I were in her shoes, but this wasn't a mistake. The affair had started before we even got married, and she wouldn't put an end to it. We separated, but it wasn't amicable. Surprisingly, Zoe agreed to the divorce without much fight. She moved her business to New York, and I haven't heard from her since. What about her lover? You mentioned he got hurt. Did that cause any trouble for you? He had bruises and was in pain for a while, but he healed. What bothered him most was the scar on his eye. It jeopardized his modeling career, but even that faded. Strangely, Zoe ended up being my alibi, since the attack happened 45 miles away while I was at home confronting her. At first, I felt like justice had been served, but that feeling didn't last. Sure, he was a sleazebag, but I didn't want that to happen, and I never encouraged it. So that's two. You've gone for the same type of women and expected a different outcome. I gave a wry smile. Sounds like something my friends would say. They've all told me the same thing. I guess I'm a slow learner because I ended up making the same mistake after Zoe. You're joking. Nope, I wish I were. As bad as it was, you'll probably get a kick out of how I found out about Samantha's affair. Samantha. My divorce was finalized in October 2016, and I decided to head to Dallas to spend Thanksgiving with Aubrey and Dennis. As expected, air travel that week was chaotic, and I ended up stuck at SeaTac for hours due to delays. I was zoning out in the airport lounge nursing a beer when a blonde woman sat down across from me. She was still on the phone, visibly frustrated. She was speaking to someone, explaining that she couldn't control the airline's decisions and couldn't just demand they take off because someone needed her on time. I couldn't help but notice how cute her dimples were when she got worked up. I smiled to myself, but as soon as she ended the call, she looked up and caught my gaze. She immediately shot me a playful but defensive look and asked if I was laughing at her. I quickly apologized, assuring her I wasn't. I told her I had simply noticed how cute her dimples were when she was frustrated. She laughed, and I could see her blush, clearly a bit embarrassed. She explained that her mom was being difficult, expecting her to be on time when the airlines were clearly at fault. I empathized, knowing how stressful air travel could be, and asked if she was okay. She sighed, mentioning that she loved her mom, but that the stress of flying combined with her attitude was a bit much. As she glanced at her phone, I noticed it was ringing, and I pointed it out to her. She groaned when she saw it was her mom calling, but said she was avoiding the call to keep her cool. I offered to buy her a drink, joking that it might help her manage the situation. She raised an eyebrow at me, skeptical of a drink from a stranger, but I quickly introduced myself. When I asked her name, she smiled and told me it was Samantha, or Sam for short. From there, the conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked for almost 2 hours before my flight was called for boarding. I was genuinely drawn to her sharp wit and warmth. She wasn't the typical model type like Harper or Zoe, but there was something about her crooked smile and those dimples that made her incredibly appealing. Plus, her athletic build made me realize I might have let myself go a bit over the years. As I stood up to board, I realized I didn't want to let the moment slip away. I asked if she was local, and when she said she lived in Redmond, I took a chance and asked if she was seeing anyone. I suggested we grab dinner sometime. She wrinkled her nose at my boldness, but agreed. She asked for my phone, saved her number under Sam, and handed it back to me. She told me to call her after Wednesday when she'd be back in town. I thanked her and said I never thought I'd enjoy a wait at the airport so much. She giggled and looked even more beautiful in that moment, joking that she might even call her mom back. We hugged, and as we parted, she asked, half serious, if I really liked her dimples, or if it was just a line. I reassured her that I meant it. Her dimples really were adorable. Before we said goodbye, she gave me one last serious look and warned me not to be some weirdo. I laughed, relieved she was joking, and told her she had nothing to worry about. I was far more afraid of boring her than anything else. The flight felt like it took no time at all as I thought about Sam. I was excited. Maybe something real was about to unfold. When I arrived in Dallas, Dennis picked me up from the airport, and I was struck by how good he looked. On the drive to their house, he shared the news that he was in remission. Dennis has always been one of the most genuine people I know, and hearing that he was doing well lifted my spirits immensely. Dennis and Aubrey had 3 kids, and their home radiated warmth and love. Aubrey prepared a fantastic Thanksgiving dinner, and as we ate, she took the opportunity to scold me for my past choices in women. As she spoke, I found myself wondering where Sam would fit into this picture if things with her worked out. I waited until Thursday to call Sam. I expected a brief conversation to arrange our first date, but instead we ended up talking for over 2 hours. By the time we hung up, I felt like I was walking on air, grinning like a teenager with a crush. It became clear to me in that moment, I wanted her. The day of our first date, I was eagerly anticipating picking Sam up, trying my best not to leave too early, even though her apartment was just a short 3 miles away. I knew that drive would become a regular part of my life in the months to come. We went to Matt's Rotisserie and Oyster House, one of my favorites, where the conversation flowed effortlessly. I couldn't help but be captivated by her, falling for her more quickly than I expected. The more we talked, the more beautiful she became to me. After dessert, we shared some light kisses, but before we left, she pulled me into a deep, passionate kiss. Despite the chemistry, I suggested we take things slow, acknowledging I was still getting over my previous marriage. Sam was patient, understanding, and though she teased me with a playful comment, we both agreed to move at a steady pace. By Christmas, the connection between us was undeniable, and we both admitted we were in love. Our desire for each other became too strong to resist. Being with Sam felt intense, like a workout I hadn't experienced since my football days at Purdue. Thankfully, her favorite position gave me enough time to catch my breath. Getting back into shape quickly became my New Year's resolution. By Valentine's Day, Sam moved in, and we both knew we were ready for the next step. We started planning a small summer wedding, confident in our commitment to each other. Sam had been a competitive volleyball player and stayed active with hiking, kayaking, biking, and jogging on the weekends. We made a game of working out, both using Fitbits to track our progress. I was in the best shape of my life. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in August. We invited just our immediate families and a few friends. Melanie, my assistant, was coming with her husband, and Aubrey and Dennis were flying in. I couldn't wait for Sam to become Mrs. Riley. The ceremony was simple, with only 37 guests, so there was no stress. Sam's sister was the maid of honor, and we had the minister perform the ceremony right at the reception hall. No need to waste time on transportation. As I stood waiting for Sam to walk down the aisle, I scanned the crowd. Melanie was smiling at me from several rows back, but I didn't see Aubrey or Dennis. I hope they hadn't had flight issues. After we said "I do" and kissed, we started the celebration. But as the reception went on, I grew more concerned about not seeing Aubrey or Dennis. 2 hours in, my phone buzzed with a text from Aubrey. "Luke, I'm sorry we missed your special day. Dennis's cancer came back, and he was hospitalized yesterday. We're okay, but I hate that I wasn't there. Call me when you get back from your honeymoon." I showed Sam the message, and she agreed I should call Aubrey right away. When I did, Aubrey tried to reassure me, but I could tell she was scared. Dennis was in serious trouble, and she wasn't hiding it well. Sam and I spent our honeymoon in Hawaii, and I made a conscious effort not to think about Dennis and Aubrey's situation. Despite the emotional weight, the trip turned out to be wonderful. Sam was incredibly attentive, providing both emotional support and physical closeness, making the experience feel special. A few weeks later, in mid-September, we flew to Dallas to visit Dennis and Aubrey. Their kids greeted me with warm hugs, calling me Uncle Luke. But what truly struck me was the sight of Dennis. The strong, athletic man I once knew had become frail and weak, his complexion pale. I had a hard time hiding my shock, but did my best to maintain a sense of normalcy. After dinner, Sam helped Aubrey with the dishes, and Dennis pulled me aside into his den. "Luke, you probably figured I'm not going to beat this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come on, Dennis, you're a fighter," I replied. "Life's a fight we all lose eventually. I'm at peace with it, but I'm worried about Aubrey and the kids. I've taken care of them financially, but promise me you'll watch out for them. The kids need their godfather, Uncle Luke, and Aubrey needs her best friend." "You don't even need to ask. I'll look out for them. You know that," I said, choking up. "I love you, man." "I know," Dennis replied softly. "The feelings are mutual. You're a good man, Lucy." I couldn't hold back the tears. I thought guys weren't supposed to cry. "Real men do, buddy," Dennis said, his voice tight. We sat in a moment of heavy silence until Dennis broke it. "By the way, Sam seems awesome. I hope you two have a long, happy life together." 2 weeks later, Dennis passed away. His service and burial were in Washington, where their families lived. Aubrey and the kids stayed with us for a few weeks as we supported them through the difficult time. Sam was incredible, always there for me as a true partner. Months later, Sam shared an idea with me. Hugh, the owner of a local gym, was planning to retire and had asked if we were interested in buying it. While Sam was content with her job at Microsoft, owning the gym had always been her dream. She was eager to make it happen, but without the capital to buy both the business and the building, she needed help. I had been doing well in the market and had considered starting an LLC for real estate investments, so we decided to move forward. We set up Riley Investments, and Sam established a separate LLC for the gym. I helped her secure a line of credit for the necessary improvements and operating expenses. With our accountant and lawyer on board, everything moved forward smoothly. We celebrated that weekend with plenty of kisses and passion. Microsoft asked Sam to consult at a great hourly rate, which eased her financial load. The gym was thriving, and Sam was handling both roles, running the gym and working for Microsoft. But it was a heavy load. When she traveled, I'd help out at the gym. We were happy and started discussing starting a family once she could focus solely on the gym. After our first anniversary, Sam had to travel to Atlanta for a few days. We kept in touch every night, and on the second evening, she called me around 6 p.m. her time. She mentioned having a productive day but still had more work to do, so we kept the conversation brief. She promised to make it up to me the next day, and I told her I was heading to the gym to check on the staff. I worked out and stayed to lock up the gym around 9 p.m. Although I considered calling Sam later, I realized it was already past midnight in Atlanta, so I assumed she was asleep. In the quiet of the gym, I grabbed my iPad to pass time and opened the Fitbit app. My heart sank as I saw Sam's activity. It was almost 1 a.m. her time. Why was she working out at this hour? The more I looked, the more I knew something was off. I called her, but it went to voicemail, then again and again. On the 5th try, she finally answered. "Babe, is everything okay?" "No, it's not." "Are you hurt or in the hospital?" "Hurt? Yes, I've been hurt badly." "What happened?" "Tell me, what's his name?" "What? Whose name?" "The guy you're with, the one you're riding in the top position. What's his name?" "Luke, how did you know?" "Answer the question, Sam. Who is he?" "Oh, damn. How did you know?" "Next time you sleep with someone else, take off your damn Fitbit." I ended the call, turned off my phone, and threw it across the room. I couldn't sleep. I walked aimlessly for miles, crying. This couldn't be happening again. Why did I keep ending up with unfaithful wives? When I finally returned home, I went straight to the computer, emptied our joint accounts into mine, and closed them. I emailed my law firm asking for an appointment with a divorce attorney. The next day, I took time off to handle everything. I had the divorce papers and the prenup ready. I met with my accountant and lawyer to begin the process of calling in my loan to Sam for the gym, which included a clause that allowed me to demand full repayment within 60 days' notice. I couldn't believe how I had been deceived. The anger I felt was overwhelming, and all I could think about was making her feel the same way I did. A part of me just wanted revenge. I hadn't spoken to Sam since the incident and had no idea when she would be back. After throwing my phone in frustration, it was broken, so I had to buy a new one and immediately block her number. I reached out to Aubrey for support. She helped calm me down, reminding me not to act out of spite. As always, she was the voice of reason when I least wanted to hear it. I promised her I'd try to stay composed. I considered going to the pub to clear my head, but since Sam was due to return soon, I hoped to confront her when she got home. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it back in time. I walked in to find Sam crying. She ran toward me, but I pushed her away. "Don't touch me, Sam." "Oh, please. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." "Sorry? No, not happening." "Don't leave me, please. I don't want to lose you." "Lose me? You threw us away." "Luke, please, I was stupid. I thought..." "Thought what? That you could get away with it? That I wouldn't care? You thought you'd smash our vows and I wouldn't mind? Or maybe you thought you could sleep around and I wouldn't notice? Or maybe you thought I'd just keep loving you after you destroyed everything?" No, I didn't think that." "Then what did you think? That it would be just recreational sex? Do you think I'm that naive?" "It wasn't justified. It was just stupid." "Stupid? You didn't even think it through. If you needed something more, I was always just a phone call away. You couldn't wait a couple of days. Please, Luke, help us get past this. Let me make this clear. You let another man touch you the way I should have been the only one to. Don't give me any excuses. This marriage is over. It died the moment you let him into your bed." Sam cried out in a way I'd never heard before. I wanted to feel satisfied, but it just hurt. "Get a grip. You'll get divorce papers soon." "No, please, not a divorce. The prenup applies. You'll get nothing, and I'm calling in the loan. You owe me over $350,000. You've got 60 days to pay it, or I take the gym. No, Luke, you'll ruin me. Shut up and listen. If you sign the divorce papers, I won't call in the loan. Fight me, and I take everything. I don't care about the money or the gym. I just want you. Please, let's work through this." "No, Sam, you knew about my history with cheating wives, and you swore you'd never do this to me. But here we are. I can't trust you again. Not after this. Damn it, Luke. I made a mistake." But are you telling me you've never wanted another woman? I fought to stay calm, biting my lip until it bled. I've had thoughts, sure, but I never acted on them. You did. Please, stop begging, it's pathetic. But we were planning a family. What? You really think I'd want my kids to have a mother like you? I want my kids to grow up with someone who respects me and themselves. I don't want them to learn from you. She cried harder, but I couldn't listen anymore. I left, telling her I'd come back in a few days after things cooled down. It was hard to leave her broken, but I had to. I needed to get away before I broke down in front of her. After a few days, I had calmed down. We talked, and I agreed to try counseling. I didn't want to be a failure again, and I still cared for her. But I didn't know if I could ever feel the same way about her. 6 weeks after our final counseling session, Sam and I returned home in silence. She had tears on her face, and I knew that night would change everything. At home, Sam broke the silence and began to share something that had been weighing on her. She revealed how, as a child, she was close to her father and made a purity pledge to him, vowing to wait until marriage. But at 18, she had given in to pressure from a boyfriend. And after that, things spiraled. One night, her father caught them in the act. He looked at her with tears in his eyes and said she was now a grown woman and could make her own choices. Sam explained how that moment shattered their bond. From that day forward, their relationship changed. They were no longer daddy and princess, but father and daughter, and the closeness was lost forever. As she spoke, I realized why she felt compelled to share this painful memory. Her past hurt was mirrored in my own pain. She explained that when I looked at her, she felt the same way she had seen her father's pain, like I was reliving her betrayal every time. Sam admitted that no matter how much I loved her or how faithful she was, I would always fear the possibility of her betraying me again. She believed something between us had been broken beyond repair. She paused and, after a long silence, told me that I deserved someone I could fully trust, and she deserved someone who saw her as she once was. We both needed to move on, separately, back at the bar. Linda's emotions were raw, tears silently streaming down her face, and I felt a lump in my throat as I relived the nightmare. After leaving Sam, I went to the pub. Kaylee, sensing something was off, quickly pulled me into the office. The door barely closed before I broke down in her arms, crying uncontrollably. She stayed with me for hours, helping me calm down, and eventually made me laugh. That's when she gave me my nickname, 3 Cheats to the Wind, reminding me I would get through this like I had before. Though I swore I'd never make the same mistake again, Kaylee knew better. I just needed time before I could move on. Linda, who had been quietly listening, nodded in understanding. She smiled slightly and placed her hand on mine. "You seem okay now. In fact, you look more than okay. You give me hope," she said. "I moved here for a fresh start, and fate brought us together so you could share your story." I reflected on my past mistakes. I realized I'd been chasing the wrong things. In high school, I prioritized image and fleeting desires over respect and shared values. I let the perfect woman slip away because I was too focused on the wrong goals. Linda softly guessed, "You were thinking of Aubrey." I smiled, closing my eyes. "Yeah, it took some time after Sam, but I finally realized the woman I needed was the one who had always been my best friend." Kaylee grinned, asking, "So you went to Dallas and swept her off her feet?" I chuckled. "You'd think so, but I somehow managed to mess that up too." Linda's expression shifted with concern. "You didn't go after Aubrey?" "I did," I replied. "But I was cautious, unsure if she was ready after Dennis's passing. We stayed in touch, and I was trying to find the right moment to tell her how I felt. Kaylee was my sounding board, and I even planned a trip to tell her." Linda's curiosity piqued. "So, what happened?" 4 weeks earlier. I woke up after a sleepless night, more like I never really slept. Tossing and turning until 3 a.m., I finally made up my mind. I was going to Dallas to tell Aubrey how I felt. If all went well, I'd come back engaged to the woman I'd wanted for as long as I could remember. Once I made that decision, sleep was impossible. My emotions were a mess, torn between excitement and fear, but I was determined to find out if she felt the same. It was Friday morning, and after a frantic rush to finish work, I bought a plane ticket for the next day. I was barely done by 4 p.m., so I stopped by the pub to tell Kaylee what I was planning. 3 cheats in one day? Kaylee teased. "I know, but I can't stay long," I said. "I finally decided I'm going to Dallas. I have to tell her." "Well, you don't? Listen, I've got to go grab a ring first." "Luke, Kaylee, thanks for everything. I couldn't have made it this far without you." "Luke, shut up and listen. Turn around." I turned to see Aubrey sitting in a booth with a guy, holding his hand. They were smiling at each other the way lovers do. My heart sank into my stomach. The pain hit so hard I barely made it outside before I was throwing up in the bushes. Stunned and disoriented, I turned off my phone and drove aimlessly. The tears blurred my vision, and before I knew it, I was in West Seattle, parked at Alki Beach. I sat there crying until the sun began to set. Eventually, I walked along the beach, lost in my thoughts, feeling completely empty. By midnight, I was back home, unable to focus. I canceled my flight, tried to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a huge mistake. Should I let her go? Should I fight for her? Nothing seemed clear. By 2 p.m. the next day, I headed to the pub to find Kaylee. I hadn't spoken to her since I'd bolted the night before, and I knew she was probably worried. The second I walked in, Kaylee saw me and didn't look concerned. She looked furious. "You damn fool! What the hell were you thinking running out like that?" She slapped a beer in front of me and went off. "I had no idea where you went. Stay put while I take care of this." I stayed quiet, shocked. Kaylee never spoke to me like that. She muttered to herself while finishing up her tasks, giving me icy looks the whole time. When she finally stood in front of me, her expression was intense, like she was holding back a storm. "You're an idiot. You spent months telling me how much you love Aubrey and then you bolt without even talking to her? But you warned me. You showed me where she was." "Warned you? About what?" "Kaylee, I love her. I was going to go to Dallas and ask her to marry me. I had already committed to her, but seeing her with that guy, I just knew. She probably had other plans." Kaylee's face softened, but her gaze drifted just past me. Then I felt a hand on my back, and a voice I knew too well. "Is that how you really feel about me, Luke? I've been waiting for almost 20 years to hear you say those words." I turned, and Aubrey pulled me in. Our kiss was electric, fierce and passionate, like nothing I had ever felt before. In that moment, I knew Aubrey was the one. After everything, 3 marriages, countless relationships, one real kiss with her confirmed what my father had always told me. Aubrey was my true love, the one I had been waiting for all along. Back at the bar, I wiped my eyes, trying to pull myself together. I'd almost lost her again. Kaylee shot me a look that was part disbelief, part amusement. "You almost missed out on the woman of your dreams again?" I didn't need her to rub it in. I could feel her eyes on me, watching as I tried to explain myself. "I told you she was sitting with another guy." Kaylee raised an eyebrow, but I saw the playful glint in her eyes. I told him he was a damn fool for jumping to conclusions. Aubrey placed her hands on my shoulders, her touch warm and reassuring, and I couldn't help but smile. "Kaylee, are you picking on Luke again?" I kissed her then, just to feel that connection again. Kaylee, though, had to comment. You two want to take that somewhere private? This public display is embarrassing the customers." Aubrey grinned. "We'll make good use of a room in a few days, right, sweetie?" Linda, standing nearby, smiled, her eyes a little misty. "You two are beautiful together." I turned to Linda, finally remembering to introduce Aubrey. "Oh, sorry, Linda. Meet my fiancé." Aubrey extended her hand with a smile. "Hi, Linda. Luke's manners are a bit off, but I'm Aubrey." Linda's eyes filled with happy tears. "I'm so glad to meet you. Luke's been talking about you all night. Honestly, if he ended up with anyone else, this would have been the worst story I've ever heard. It's amazing when high school sweethearts find their way back." Aubrey raised an eyebrow, looking at me. "Luke, you've been talking about me?" I grinned, shrugging. "You're the only thing worth talking about." Aubrey kissed me again, that soft, teasing kiss that made everything feel right. "Oh, you're sweet." But we weren't really sweethearts, just best friends. I had to explain, couldn't let that slide. We both wanted to be more, but neither of us knew how to move from friendship to something else. Aubrey chuckled. Luke was a teenage boy, and I wasn't about to be the subject of his experiments. I couldn't help but laugh along with her, even as I admitted, "Okay, she's right." Sometimes I wonder how things might have been if I'd grown up faster. I always loved her, but settled for women who looked like her but were empty inside. Linda, always quick with a compliment, smiled warmly. "Well, Luke was right when he beamed about how beautiful you are." Aubrey's smile was a little shy, but genuine. "You two are too kind. The only thing that matters is when I look in Luke's eyes, I see his heart completely intertwined with mine. I feel like the luckiest woman alive." Linda looked at us both, still emotional, but now with a hint of concern. "Wait, what happened to the other guy?" Aubrey smiled gently, squeezing my hand. "There was no other guy. That was my cousin Paul. I was staying with him while I looked for a place around here." I'd already planned to move back and hoped Luke would finally get the courage to ask me to marry him. Linda laughed, wiping away more tears. You two are perfect. I was hoping that I might have a shot at Luke, but I see that's a lost cause. I moved here from California for a fresh start. I was hoping to find friends, and maybe a soulmate. Kaylee leaned over the bar, her arm draped around Linda and me. Linda, you've got 3 new friends right here. Aubrey added, Yes, you have to come to the wedding on Saturday, especially since you're new around here. Linda hesitated, but the warmth in the room was hard to resist. I don't want to intrude. Kaylee waved her off. It's no intrusion, girl. Celebrating the marriage of 2 of your new friends. You'd better come. Everyone there will be from around here, and I'm sure you'll make tons of new friends. Linda finally relented. Okay, you've convinced me. Aubrey smiled. Luke, text her the details. Linda, still teary-eyed, shook her head. You really are the sweetest couple. Does it seem a shame you had to go through all that to get here? Aubrey paused, thinking carefully before she answered. I can't speak for Luke, but I think he needed those experiences to get his head on straight. As for me, I wouldn't trade my time with Dennis or the joy of raising our 3 kids. I loved him with all my heart, and wishing things had gone differently with Luke doesn't really matter. The timing was just right. My love for Luke never left me. It's as strong as my love for Dennis. I'm lucky to have had 2 great men fill my life with love. Linda wiped away a tear. That's so beautiful. It really is a miracle you 2 finally got together. I shook my head, grinning. It wasn't a miracle, it was a conspiracy. Kaylee leaned in, grinning. When Luke and Sam broke up, I called Aubrey. Luke had already told her, but I didn't call for that. I asked her when they were going to wake up and get together. Aubrey, smiling now, added, Dennis had been gone for 11 months. I wasn't ready for a new relationship, but I knew getting with Luke was always on my mind. I just didn't think he was ready either. We talked weekly, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. So I told Kaylee to help him heal, while I figured out if he'd be ready when I jumped in, finally getting to the part that felt like the turning point. It took about 6 months, but I realized I couldn't think about anything or anyone but Aubrey. I even thought about moving to Dallas to start over and build a future with her. Aubrey laughed. Of course, he didn't know I was already planning to move back to Kirkland. Shh, I'm telling the story, Kaylee teased. And then Luke almost ruined everything with his disappearing act. Aubrey rolled her eyes, laughing. Kaylee! I grinned. Anyway, when Aubrey walked up behind me after Kaylee chewed me out, it felt like I went from darkness to light. Before I could even speak, I was kissing her like never before. It was electrifying, like my heart was finally beating again. Aubrey, remembering the moment, smiled at me. That was some kiss, baby. Every kiss with you feels like that, I said, looking at her lovingly. So, when we finally pulled away, she looked in my eyes and asked, You tell her, sweetie. Aubrey smirked. I said, Luke, do you love me as much as I just heard you tell Kaylee? He was saying such sweet things about me. And I answered, I love you with all that I am. Marry me, Aubrey. That was 4 weeks ago. Linda gasped. Wait, you planned an entire wedding in 4 weeks? I nodded. I've wasted 16 years not being with the woman I've always wanted. I knew she was the one all along, and I blew it with too many bad choices. We weren't going to waste another second. The wedding, when it came, was perfect. There was no question about it. Aubrey was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Linda came to the wedding, and while she got to know everyone, she especially hit it off with Aubrey's older brother, who was single. They've been inseparable for months now, and Linda has become one of our closest friends. I'm no longer Uncle Luke. The kids now call me Papa Luke. They even asked if they should call me Dad. I told them I already loved them like my own, but their dad was special and they should always remember him as Dad. Papa Lucy worked just fine. Before the wedding, Aubrey asked if I wanted a prenuptial agreement. No way, honey, you are my life, my everything. There's no need for a plan B. So, no 3 Cheats to the Wind sequel? She teased. No way. Being married to you is better than anything I deserve. My days of marrying cheaters are over. Maybe one of our kids will write a story about us someday and call it, It Only Took 4 Tries, or something like that. Speaking of kids, Mr. Riley, we need to set up a nursery. My past relationships are long gone, and I can finally say with all my heart, oh yeah, life is good.